It is 6:32. We are going to begin and open this meeting of the Morrisville Town Council work session for April 17th, 2018. That is the call to order. I would like to entertain a motion of switching item 2B with item 2A, just for process to get that out of the way and give our consultants a chance to get prepared to start. We don't really, we're not approving an agenda, so we can just go ahead and get head nods on that. Is that okay? Okay. So I'd like to bring forth item 2B, wayfinding gateway sign update by Stephanie Smith. Thank you, Ms. Smith.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So I am here to bring you an update on our gateway wayfinding sign design concepts. So previously I had provided some design concept options for feedback. So we collected feedback from staff and from council, and our design consultant came up with a modified design. So the goal tonight is to review the design proposed for both the wayfinding and gateway signs, get any feedback from council, or again, kind of a head nod to move forward with the proposed designs. I'm also bringing forward some proposed sign locations for our gateway signs. So we'll discuss those, each of those locations. Again, looking for input from council for the proposed locations, also any additional locations for consideration. So I'll just go ahead and get started. So first, wayfinding sign design. The picture you see above is the preferred design option for several reasons. You can see that it incorporates our brand colors. Also, the shape of the sign in the background is the shape of our mark, so kind of a subtle brand association there. Also, there are blades that are attached to the background sign. A big positive of this design is that those are changeable. So we discussed having the ability to expand and grow our wayfinding sign system, and this would allow us to do that. So we'd be able to change those blades, add to them if need be. And I think particularly for the time that we're doing this project, knowing that we have a lot of major projects that are coming online, our downtown, we want to be able to expand to those areas as well with this design. Any feedback on this design at this point?
Yeah, we and Kerry are pretty much intertwined with things, right? I'm trying to recollect what the Kerry signage looks like. Does ours stand out to say it's different than Morrisville in terms of colors and the way it looks?
Mm-hmm. So I'm glad you brought that up. Kerry has a wayfinding sign system for their downtown area. And actually one of the proposed designs of the wayfinding sign the design consultant came forward with was eliminated because it looked very similar to that downtown Kerry sign system. So this color scheme and the shape and feel of the signs is different from the downtown Kerry signage, and that was definitely a consideration when we selected this one.
So more than the downtown was, I see signs around Davis Drive where it talks about the parks. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, the parks are here. I don't know the name of the park in the opposite to Davis Drive middle. There's some parks there, and then different locations mm-hmm. where it talks about it. So I'm sure this wayfinding signs will be going all across the same way, right? It's not just concentrated to the downtown.
Correct. It'll be all over town, yeah.
So will that help to put some M or just this color?
We could certainly look at that. That's one thing that we discussed internally as staff is maybe extending the green portion above where the blue blades start and possibly putting the Town of Morrisville logo there. So there's no confusion whatsoever that it is a Town of Morrisville sign. So that is something that we can be adding to the design.
Just something to distinct between Morrisville and Kerry so that they know which one is what.
Sure.
That's all. That's good.
Okay. Or even the word Morrisville
mm-hmm.
or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How would these look if there was only one blade, or could it be expanded to 4 blades?
There is some variability to it, and so if it was just one blade, the size of the blade itself would be larger. So there wouldn't be a one width limit, it would be, kind of shaped to fit the background sign.
And what defines the wayfinding criteria? Do you have a criteria set in your pattern? Like otherwise, everyone will say we want this to be on your
Right,
thing.
right. And that's kind of, once we have a design finalized, that's kind of the next phase that we'll move into with this process is there are industry standards, so to speak, of what types of facilities would warrant a wayfinding sign. We would determine that as a town that for our organization, this is the list of criteria that would get assigned. So that would be well established. So there wouldn't be any confusion about what would and wouldn't get assigned. Obviously, public facilities, kind of the rule of thumb is locations that are publicly accessible, that aren't, exclusive clubs, require memberships, things like that. And so that would be clearly defined before we would start specifically selecting the different locations around town that would get.
Yeah, that's the reason I'm very specific in asking that, so that these things, when people come and ask us if we want our things on it, those criteria have to be well defined before.
Exactly, yes.
Okay, perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
So right now, all you're looking at is some direction on if this is a good template.
Correct.
I like it. I think it's great.
Yeah.
Okay,
Mark, it looks good.
great. Okay, thank you.
Is that consensus from everybody?
Yes.
Saticius?
I'm going to say, but are we looking at the distinction of looking into what changes from Morrisville to Cary, or we do not know?
Totally different color and design, right? Didn't you say?
It's a different color scheme, but yes, but I'll look at how it would look to add the logo somewhere on this sign. But the design concept itself, so that's what we're...
No, that's all
Okay.
I care about. It's not.
It is already distinctive from the Cary
That's-
ones, in my recollection.
Yeah, that's what my recollection. I don't have to back next to each other to.
Maybe as a follow-on, you can show us some pictures of some of the Cary ones.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. Mhm.
That'd be really helpful. Thank you.
Okay. So next, gateway signs. So I outlined the design details before the signs. There are two options. They're very, very similar. So at first glance, it's hard to tell what even the difference is between the two of them. For the design details, the sign itself is 15 feet long, 9 feet tall. It's a brick base with a aluminum box with raised letters for the actual sign portion. There is an option to illuminate either from the inside or upcast, which would mean install lighting on the ground. One idea that staff raised that we would like to explore is the option for some kind of solar lighting capability. So if it was internally lit, some type of small solar panel, so self-sustaining that way. So the first design option, again, you see the brick base with the aluminum box. A couple of changes that we made was matching the color of the green to our brand logo color. We also, from the original option, removed the frame around the M mark and made the mark itself a little larger, so on the column it stands out a bit more. And then the other thing, there are certain locations that we're proposing that you would be able to see the sign, the front of the sign and the back of your sign as you're exiting Morrisville. And so we have an option for where that would be applicable to have text on the back of the sign that would say, "Thank you for visiting Morrisville." So it's just not a blank green box from behind. So this is the first option. So you can see that there are two kind of decorative breaks on the brick. Going to the second option, the elements above the brick base are the same. What's different is kind of a thicker frame on the bottom. So feedback on these options in general, and then if there's a preference between option 1 and option 2.
What is that material?
The box is aluminum, so the green would be aluminum.
The brown on the bottom.
Oh, the brown, I believe, is stucco,
I like the option
concrete
1.
stucco.
When I looked at both of them, the option 1 stood out.
Okay.
Right away.
Is it possible to see them side by side or not so much?
Not super easily.
Okay.
I can flip quickly between them.
Not that the other ones.
And option 1.
Both nice.
Oh, it's the bottom.
Yeah, it's down here. I tried to put a little arrow next to it to see.
I like that one.
Which one?
I said one. I like the brick.
Yeah, we can all just sort of weigh in. Sounds like we have two for option one. I prefer option one just because it doesn't give you three things to look at. You're really drawn to the Morrisville. Otherwise, it's a little bit of a distraction.
Okay.
And it leaves room for graffiti.
Oh my gosh. That's true. Steve and Satish, do you have any preferences or thoughts about either of those?
Is there a height difference? Because see, 3 layers on option 1 versus option 2, because the stucco which is going up, and you're getting less brick in option 1.
The heights are the same. And
heights
so,
are the same?
yeah, so this section at the bottom here where it's all brick, it would just be replaced by the stucco. It's not a height difference.
Oh, okay. So because when you look illusion, it looks a different illusion. Okay. Yeah, option 1 looks. And what material is the one which says Town of Morrisville? Is it
Aluminum.
aluminum? And it's just a paint, which is
It's raised lettering.
It's raised lettering,
raised
yes.
letter. Okay.
And then the green, the whole green would be illuminated? Or the letters would be?
I believe we're talking about the letters being illuminated, so looking at the letters backlit, illumination, possibly solar panel, or it would be lit from the ground. So some way, shape, or form, we'd like a lighted sign so that you can see it at night.
I like the idea of solar, too.
Yeah, I agree with this.
So this is the capstone above the N. Those could be solar panels.
Right.
Would be kind of nice.
I'm going to say, does the solar really give, the concept of solar is good, but does the solar really give that kind of lumens to
Right, would it
do
be bright
justice?
enough? Yeah.
Because it all depends on the day of the sunlight, and during the 6 months of winter time, is it getting that much recharging power?
Right.
And the floodlight that it really wants to give justice to the sign.
Yeah, and that's part of the conversation that we'll have with the designer to kind of weigh those options and see if it would be something that would be feasible, that we think would provide enough power to give it enough light.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't necessarily limit the solar panels to the structure itself. It could be nearby, sort of like a little power area,
Right.
as long as it's not unsightly. Sounds like and these would always be on the right side of the road? Entering town, but they're on the left
Ideally,
when leaving?
it depends on which location you're talking about. The next step of this, once we determine locations, will be working with NCDOT, but it's also working with NC Railroad. So when you're talking about railroad right-of-way, particularly when you're talking about the stretch down 54, that would be a consideration. So the goal, yes, would be to put it in a visible location that you're seeing it on the right side as you're entering town. We just need to make sure that we are not encroaching in railroad right-of-way, that we would be allowed to put a sign in that area.
And would the pillar ever be on the right side, or would it always be on the left? Him on the left and
It would be like this, yeah, on the left side.
so is everyone comfortable with option 1? Is what I mostly heard.
Option 1 is fine.
Okay.
I'm just looking at the
Anything else
location.
from that?
Nope.
Okay. And thank you very much for the opportunity to say thank you for visiting Morrisville. That might be good in some places.
Yeah, absolutely. So next, we're talking about location options. So in the presentation, I gave each location separately. Rodney in our planning department actually created a map that shows you in town where the signs would be located. And so it kind of shows sort of the distribution around town where the locations are. So the little red stars on the paper that show where in town the signs are located to demonstrate we're trying to get a broad representation of all of the main access points to town. So the first one, Aviation Parkway near Dominion Drive. So this would capture traffic coming into Morrisville, mainly from I-40, also from the airport.
Okay,
Next.
so if we start at like 12 o'clock, so which number would that be? Would that be number
I'd have to look at the map.
1? 2 or 3 o'clock, far right.
Yes, it would be the one on the far right. So it's as you're coming across the bridge on Aviation, coming into Morrisville that way.
North of the lake.
Can you draw that for me? Yeah. Where exactly the location would be on the
Because a little bit further up, we have one of the obelisks.
That would be
It's kinda
removed.
hidden. That would go away. Would it be in that spot?
It could be.
Okay.
What do we do with those?
One is located in the Public Works yard, and then there are still 2 that remain out there. So,
So what kind of feedback
Something
are
with
you
them.
asking for on this?
so I can go through all the locations just to kind of outline where they would be, and then if you had any feedback on the proposed locations, and then if there were any additional locations that you wanted to consider. Okay.
So I have some feedback on this one. Does anyone else have any feedback on this one? The Aviation near the land bridge, the causeway, near Lake Crabtree?
That's where I'm trying to figure out which side of the road it is. So I'm trying to get the feel.
So if you're coming off of 40 and you cross the bridge over Lake Crabtree, the sign would be on the right side of the road just over the bridge as you're coming into Morrisville that way.
The more on
Okay, so sort of before the buildings, right next to that first industrial park. That seems like a good spot.
And to be clear, you had put in your presentation, Stephanie, that you would not do this until the road work is done.
Correct. Yes, there's 6 proposed locations. 3 of them we feel comfortable moving forward with an installation for. 3 of them we recommend waiting until the road improvement project is done for that particular road before installing the sign.
So you're talking about till 2022, the whole project is complete.
So no changing the logo before then. Okay, it's kind of a joke.
But
Not changing the logo for a while.
Okay, so any other feedback on the Aviation? Okay, we'll move on to the next one.
Next one would be Airport Boulevard near Ariel Center Parkway. That's right near the old outlet mall. So as you're coming off of 40, yep. So if now we're kind of going counterclockwise. And so it's the next one. Yep, top right. So if you're coming off of 40 at the airport exit, coming towards Morrisville, it would be on the right side, kind of in front of where the outlet mall property is located.
so to be clear, the first location, it's just a spot. We're not doing anything. Means we're not doing till the road improvement is done. Is that
Correct.
So even
Correct.
this one.
This is
also
another one that
Like because with the airport interchange, is that the same thing going to happen for this one too?
correct. Yes.
Okay, so I just wanted to be clear. So
Yes.
2 out of 2 locations set, nothing to be happen till the road improvement.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Got it.
Okay.
That sounds reasonable. Any other thoughts on that one? Okay.
All right. The third one would be Chapel Hill Road near Carrington Mill Boulevard. So this one would be capturing traffic coming into Morrisville from 540 and from the Durham direction.
So I just have a quick comment about that one. I get it, capturing the traffic off of 540, but the Morrisville line, is further back up 54.
It is. And
Not that location versus this location.
we wanted to capture the traffic coming off of 540. So that was the thought process there. We did originally select a location further back, but ultimately we wanted to kind of get the most bang for our buck. And so this is the one location that when you're looking at the Morrisville boundaries, it's set in a little bit.
And any changes on this, or will that continue as far as location, or you're waiting for road improvement for this one too?
This would be the road improvement. So we'd be waiting for the road improvement for this one as well. The last 3 are the ones that we would be comfortable moving forward with. I got the ones that we would be waiting on out of the way first.
Okay.
And there's already some pillars up near the Walmart. Would they go away, or would you leave those?
Those might be a little more difficult. We could save the seal insert. Those are the ones that have the brick pillar with the seal in them.
Okay. So this one you don't have to decide right now. I like the idea of capturing all the traffic off 540, but it would really be nice to be really pretty much, you're entering Morrisville now, so people know when they go to Sam's and Walmart.
So more at the perimeter.
But that's something that this council doesn't have to decide right away, because we're going to wait till after.
It's not going to happen for a while.
For a
anyhow,
while.
so
Okay.
we can
So if we
revisit.
could revisit that before
Absolutely.
we actually pull the trigger on that one, we might have different thoughts at
Okay.
that time.
But this location in general, we're comfortable with. Okay.
I see head nods on that. Yep.
Okay. Next, so other side of Chapel Hill Road near Wilson Road. So this would be capturing drivers coming from the other direction. So people coming from the Raleigh-Cary area into Morrisville. So this location was selected, the Wilson, I believe it's Wilson Place development that's going in now. So we're envisioning putting a sign in that location where that development is going in.
So the only question I have about that one is there is future road work coming there too. So, although I don't know that that project has a date.
So the thought was putting it near the development because as part of that development, they're widening the road in that area
That's true, it'll be
in
on the
anticipation for the road widening and overall.
So that road work is substantially complete
Well, on the one side.
and in its final form.
Correct.
Okay. The one thing about that area is sight lines, so we want to try to make sure that there's lead up to it so people can see it rather than just pass it and say, what was that? So that would be one concern in that area, I believe. But that's a good one to really make sure that people know that when they get to Park Place and Park West, that
Right.
that is us. Because that's been a battle.
Yeah, so people ask that question all the time.
Right.
I know.
So that's a really good location that staff has chosen for that. Any thoughts on that one, Satish?
No, I'm fine.
Liz, Jerry, that one seem okay?
Okay. Next one, Davis Drive near Parkside Valley. This would be near the Breckenridge development. This would capture drivers coming into Morrisville from RTP or further down 540 from the Davis Drive exit off of, 40 Davis Drive.
And how far will it be from the Breckenridge Monument?
We wouldn't put it too close, but the idea is to put it prior to
Because
that.
I see where the town limit starts, is around that town,
Right, right.
that place.
So we'd be putting the sign as close to the town limits as we could. But with all of the signs, we would be considering any existing signage monuments that we wouldn't be impeding on or interfering or blocking a sight line to. So that would be a consideration.
Because, yeah, that I want. When I read this, I had a question because whoever did the arms for the traffic did from the GIS and didn't really plan it well and put those arms right when this Breckenridge signs were. And it went in and pretty much blocked the signage of the entrance. And when I asked, I said it was done by NCDOT, and they looked up the GIS, and that's how the placement was.
Yeah.
So I want to be cognizant on this one. And it goes back to the first slide of locations. What is the norm of how far? I'm anticipating one more sign will come for Parkside Elementary too. So how far is the distance that you really keep of these signages for identifications? Right.
So that's something that we would work with the design firm on, and we would also work with DOT for kind of their regulations and standards. But we certainly don't want to crowd an area with too many signs, especially these types of large-scale monument signs. We want them to each be kind of standalone visible.
Yeah, because that was my thought process, because you pretty much had to put a sign, Parkside Elementary to the side.
Right.
And then this would come there, so.
Well, in Parkside Elementary, that would be a good contender for a wayfinding sign.
Exactly.
So that would be a sign that would go on a blade, and that takes up a little bit less of a footprint, but all of that would be considered. You know, we're going to be looking at kind of future growth. When we're installing a sign of this size in the ground, we want to make sure that we're putting it in a location that it's not going to interfere with anything that's existing or interfere with any known future projects.
That would also point to Northwest Park.
Yes, exactly. And because they just did the RTP walkway, right? And the location is really tight. Might be there is some spot.
Right.
And my other thing goes back to the sign at 40 and this one. When you're putting the sign, how much is the width of it? Does it capture? Because looking at the future growth of Davis, it's going to become a 6-lane road, all right? It's not going to interfere this part of Parkside Valley where you're putting it because or is it going to expand this? I don't think it's going to expand this way
Right.
when you're making a 6-lane. But when people are going, the idea is to see the feel of Morrisville has arrived and Morrisville has, thank you. Will that capture with that sign? Can you ask your consultant about that, especially about 4-lane and 6-lane?
Yeah, so I mean, the wider the road is, the further away you're going to have a car that's all the way in the left lane that's going to see a sign on the side of the road. But the way that these signs were designed were to be substantial enough that they would be visible as you're driving down the road.
Perfect.
I just don't recall, is there a median there? And is that what's going to take up 2 additional lanes? Or
I don't know how the growth of the 6-lane is because that's Benjamin said it's set for 6-lane, right, Benjamin? You said for Davis Drive expansion.
because a monument in the middle on Davis would be kind of nice going in.
Right, so if the design firm could find out from NCDOT about the plans for that widening and whether or not it's possible to have it in the median.
Okay. I don't think that's allowed, but we can certainly check.
It's a blockage to a view, it's line of sight.
And I'll just add, very much like a lot of our other projects, one of the things that will happen as we look at these signs is any site constraints will come out in your design process that you'll have to work through. So some of that stuff just isn't known right now.
Okay, perfect.
We're getting too far down the road, huh?
You are?
Yeah. Okay.
Literally and figuratively.
Ourselves back in.
Okay?
So in general, that area is what you're asking?
Yes.
And yes, it's a good area.
Okay.
That's all she needs.
By saying yes to that area, though, we don't really have an entrance for Kids Creek higher up. You know what I mean?
Correct.
If we do right near there, where you could take a left onto the backside.
Well, and the problem with that is further up, that's not technically Morrisville.
It's just to the side.
So we would have to go down Kitts Creek Road and put a sign there once you crossed into Morrisville. So that wasn't a location that we looked at just because that part would not see the volume of traffic that Davis Drive would further down. That could potentially be something that we consider with a wayfinding sign system, but the first place that you come into Morrisville on Davis is that location just before Parkside Valley Drive.
Is there any thought towards having our significant monument entrance and a secondary that's maybe a little smaller?
We could, yeah.
Something more than a wayfinding, but less than
Sure.
the big monument? Because that's something like the pillars, with just the M on it.
Right.
Might be nice for some of the secondary entrances.
Yeah, and we talked about that too, that going back to the design, that it kind of lends itself to just having the pillar to a secondary sign. So that is something that, yeah. So that's something that we could look at more specifically to maybe a larger neighborhood entrance in that location. That would kind of be a next phase after we establish these larger, more main entry points.
Okay. So, yeah, in the next phase, if you could sort of identify where those might be as well. Because ideally, every time you enter on a road, you'd hit some kind of monument, let people know, except on Town Hall Drive, because there'd be too many.
Right. Right.
I think you understand where I'm going with that.
Mhm.
That makes sense?
But
Because also from the back of Breckenridge, when you enter, it'd be nice to...
we do have, right, like entering town limits, leaving town limits.
Yeah, DOT puts signs in almost all of the locations that you enter into Morrisville, yes.
Yes, so those are there, so we have to be cognizant of not being redundant with those signs too, right? So, so this is like waste finding versus having our identity versus knowing the town limits, like in and out.
Right.
So those are two different things that we're trying to capture. That was the reason, because I was there are different entry points that people come from. So it's pretty much almost impossible to put a sign on every
Right.
thing, and that's where you see like entering Morrisville, leaving Morrisville, entering Cary.
Right.
So how do you quantify which are key areas?
Exactly. And these are not inexpensive.
Exactly.
But they should be expected to last a while.
For as long as our brand lasts.
Okay.
3-4 years.
Oh my gosh.
And one of the design elements of this monument sign is because this is an aluminum box, because it is an attachment, it could be replaced. So long time down the road, if rebranding was considered, the brick monument itself wouldn't have to be replaced. You could replace the mark and the aluminum box. So that's for a different council to worry about.
Okay. So are we all good with the Parkside Valley one? Okay, thank you.
And then the final one, so other side of Davis Drive, this would be near Morrisville Parkway. So this would be capturing drivers coming into Morrisville from Cary.
There's already a monument there now.
Yes.
It doesn't say Morrisville, but
So the same location, the corner unit where it is right now?
Yeah, I mean, and the idea is, again, this is exactly where you're coming into Morrisville, so we would be looking for a piece of property that would accommodate the sign that, again, is not going to conflict with existing or future signs, but this would be the area that we'd be looking at to add a sign to. It may end up being, as you cross Morrisville Parkway, get closer to, is it Morrisville Market? Before you come to the Morrisville Carpenter Road intersection. It's just going to depend on the property aspect of where a sign would be installed. But
Near the CVS?
before you get to that intersection. Mm-hmm.
Fine.
Okay.
Yeah, that one's going to be interesting. Like, which direction do you want it to face? Is it for Davis Drive traffic, or is it for people entering onto Morrisville Parkway into the neighborhood?
That it would be intended for Davis Drive traffic, but this might be a good location for a sign that would say, "Thank you for visiting Morrisville," on the other side as you're leaving, because you get a lot of traffic both ways.
Everyone okay with that one?
So is it?
It's right near your house.
So is it? Let me put it, Stephanie. Would it not be too much having two signs within? I'm guessing less than 2 miles on the same street of Davis Drive.
Well,
I mean, our entire Morrisville is boxed into like a small thing, but it's pretty much if you look down Davis Drive, you're seeing Parkside Valley. Traffic lights down. Again, one more light. You're doing. Is it a better location, or is that the best location? I'm just asking.
Well, from a mileage standpoint, they're closer, but they're capturing two completely different sections of population. Yeah. You're capturing the people who are coming from RTP, coming from Durham, and you're capturing the people coming from Cary, Apex, even Raleigh. So even though they're geographically in a similar location, you're getting visibility from two different groups of people is the thought process.
Got it.
Okay. All right, so kind of mentioned this as we went, but phase one, these would be the ones that we are comfortable moving forward with, working towards installation now, would be Chapel Hill near Wilson and both of the Davis Drive signs. And then the other three, these would be installed after road improvement projects would take place. Accomplish the goals for tonight's work session. So from here, I'll take your feedback. We'll finalize the designs. And then we'll work with the design consultant. They will create the construction intent documents. That's what we'll be able to go forward with an RFP for. And that's when price tags will start getting assigned once we finalize the design, talk about the different lighting options, things like that. And then we'll also start working with DOT, possibly railroad, for property location, things like that.
Okay, there was some talk of solar and lighting options. Is it possible to get more than just like a PowerPoint, actual photos of example signs using the different technologies?
I can work on that.
I think that would be really helpful to really see what it's going to look like.
Okay.
If there's any nearby examples that we could visit, even better, or video, because a picture sometimes can't really capture at nighttime
Sure.
what you're really getting.
Is there going to be a sign, I think we already mentioned, to the aquatic center?
Well, that facility will have a sign in front of it once it's completed, but it'll also be part of the wayfinding system.
How will we let people know when it does close for a year when we're renovating? Is there any way?
We'll have a whole communications plan for that.
Okay, so there won't be any, because some people might not know and they might want to go there. So,
I think just sawhorses at the beginning of the driveway will tell them.
okay.
I think Jerry's all over that.
Can you speak into the microphones a little bit better, please?
Sorry. So I understand that what we're saying is that we're going to have a communications plan when the fitness center closes. So
You made a good point that the wayfinding signs will direct people towards that. So that's going to be really helpful.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, council, well done, moving through that one nicely. Now we're going to move on to item 2A, Town Council Land Use Plan Update, identifying key issues. Brad West will bring us through that one.
see Brad West in a while. Brad West.
So good evening. This is the second official land use plan update meeting and kind of our process to kick off this whole project. The point of tonight's work session is to first introduce you to our land use planning consultants that are going to be helping us draft this new updated plan. They're going to be going over the sort of land use planning process, the associated timeline with that process. Courtney is going to also step in and give you a little more clarity on the timeline. And then finally, we're going to end the night with a sort of issues identification workshop. So basically, some identifying key land use planning and development issues within town, and they'll also conduct that. So I'm going to go ahead and invite Michio Murakishi and John Housel from Housel Levine Associates up to the podium to start the presentation.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Sorry we're running a few minutes late. A couple of mistakes. We gave ourselves a half an hour instead of 40 minutes, and we went to the wrong building. So I apologize for that. It will not happen again. To echo, we're just kicking off this process, and we've had a meeting with the planning and zoning. We've had meetings with staff. And at the beginning, we think it's important to get in front of the right groups and orient them, let you know who we are, get to know you a little bit better. You're the policy decision makers. You're the ones who set the tone for the town. And we wanted to go over this evening a little bit about who we are, give you a little bit of experience regarding us, some of the expertise we bring to the table. Michio is then going to run through our scope of work on how we're going to get through this process from this evening to an adopted land use plan, a new land use plan. And we're going to hopefully spend about 20 minutes or so doing that. And then spend another hour or so going through a workshop with you that is going to be similar to the workshops we will be conducting with business owners, focus groups, neighborhoods, the community at large, local developers, to begin to ascertain from you what your priorities are for the community, what you think we need to be addressing going forward, what you think the greatest assets are that we should be building off of to leverage going forward. We want to get a sense of those from you, so when we begin to engage the public going forward, we can compare sort of the temper of this room versus what developers are saying, what fifth graders are saying, what residents are saying, what business owners are saying, to see if there's a disconnect or see if people are generally in lockstep with what we ought to be focusing on. So we're going to take you through a real quick presentation, then I'll turn it over to Michio to go through the scope of work. So real quick, we'll give you a little firm overview as to who we are. I'm John Housel, founding principal of Housel Levine Associates. And with me is Michio. Michio is one of our senior associates. Without question, our strongest project manager in terms of staying on schedule, on task, working with staff, meeting deliverables, exceeding expectations on those deliverables, meeting budgets and timeframes. And he's the one we wanted to assign to this project. So Michio, myself as owner of the firm, Nick Davis, who's been down here now on a couple occasions, also a principal, will be the trio you see most often on the ground here, as well as we've got a dedicated staff of about 16 other planners we'll be bringing in as we need their expertise. But we wanted to assure you that you're going to get the very best our firm has to offer, and this is an important project not for you only, but for us as well. A little bit about Halcyon Levine Associates. We really specialize in helping communities. We focus on community planning, urban design, and economic development. We're not an engineering firm that says, oh, yeah, we do planning. We're not an architecture firm that says, oh, yeah, we also do planning. We're not a landscape architecture firm that says, oh, yeah, we do planning. We're a community planning firm. It's our bread and butter. It's what we do. 90% of our clients are municipalities. And we work all over the United States. We've worked in more than 20 states across the country, in more than 250 cities. And we've worked on comprehensive plans from major metropolitan areas of 1 million plus to farming communities of 50 people and everything in between. So it's what we do. In 2014, the American Planning Association awarded us a National Planning Excellence Award and recognized us as being the most influential planning firm in the United States. And what we were doing was literally changing the way planning was being done in this country. And that was after my firm was 9 years old. So that was a nice thing to hear when you're a firm of 12 people in Chicago, to get that sort of reverberation across the profession. We really take to heart what we do, and we love what we do. And we're constantly trying to do a better job, not resting on the success we had last year with another community. So when you're talking about a comprehensive plan, you can't just have a plan that says, oh, yeah, we do comprehensive plans. We do master land use plans. We do land use planning, because it dovetails with so many other intricacies. Comprehensive planning and land use planning, zoning is a key thing. Now, I know every community faces zoning and land use planning differently. Zoning is not planning. A lot of communities think it is. Zoning is not planning. Zoning is a tool to help a community implement priorities, objectives, sense of place, character, to guide development. But planning is you are informed by planning, and that helps you begin to know how to change or modify your zoning. But zoning is not planning. Planning has to come first, and that's an important thing. We want to zero in and focus on specific sub-areas. Some areas just deserve a heightened level of detailed analysis beyond the policy or the land use planning across the spectrum of the community. Where are those areas that are most volatile to change? Where are the areas that are most susceptible to development in the next 5 or 10 years? A stable single-family residential development, likely not going to see a ton of change in the next 10 years. An area along a major corridor that isn't fully developed yet, likely to see a lot of change in the next 5 to 10 years. So we need to focus in on those areas with a little bit more heightened level of detailed responsiveness to areas that are more susceptible to development, change, and interest. And we're going to be doing that as part of this process. We're talking about making places. Morrisville isn't like any place else. We just sat through the gateways, the wayfinding, the identification system. You don't go through that if you want to just sort of blend in with your surroundings and blend with your neighbors. You want to stand out. You've got a brand in a community that is unique to this area and is distinctly yours. And within a community, you have areas that are very distinct areas. Where do you want to see a greater mix of uses? Where do you want to see concentrated activity areas? Where do you want to see areas created in the future where people are able to assemble together, to meet, to socialize, to become stronger neighbors, and in essence, a better community? So where would these placemaking take place? Where would these concentrated areas of activity, where should those be going forward? And ultimately, everything has to be grounded in fiscal impact and economic realities. We will not make a land use recommendation just because you think it's one you want to see. We will make land use recommendations that we think are visionary but economically viable. If something is not viable in the marketplace, we're not going to say you should do it just because we think you want to hear it. We need to be very honest about this. We too often come into planning communities that 5 years before adopted a plan that had no market grounding. And they're frustrated because they're like, we've been planning this, we got all excited, and we talk to developer after developer, and they just look at us and go like, that's never going to happen there. So we want to make sure we're fiscally responsible. We want to make sure we are economically viable, but we want to make sure we are true to the vision of what Morrisville needs to be going forward. And that's a very important thing to be able to do. And to make sure we're going to do that, again, Michio also, with Dan Gardner, heads up our economic development and fiscal impact division in our firm. So they won't let us get away with something that isn't market viable. Again, we've done land use planning and comprehensive planning across the United States. I will not go into all of them. Here are a few. Ask me questions if you'd like. I will not go into much detail. What I want to highlight is just a couple of projects to give you a flavor of the importance of planning and some of the ones we worked on. Imagine Flint is a master plan. In Michigan, a comprehensive plan is called a master plan. It's a 10 to 20-year guide for the community. In Michigan, you're required to do this every 5 years legally. They hadn't done one in over 50. So, and we run into this now and then. But the first part of this was engage a community that for 50 years it really hadn't been engaged in. They didn't feel a sense of community. They didn't feel a sense of, they felt disinvested. They felt disenfranchised. So the first thing was to name it something beyond a master plan, because people didn't know what that was, to use local photographers and local campaigns to begin to do social media, to do posters, to do postcards, to do email blasts, and really engage a community in a 100% transparency throughout the entire process, something they had never really seen before. And in 18 months, first they bid this thing out at 3 years, then they asked us if we could do it in 18 months, and we did. We engaged over 5,000 people in an 18-month window and got unanimous recommendation from the steering committee, the planning commission, and the city council, something which had never been done before. And at steering committee meetings, we were getting 70-plus residents attending steering committee meetings because they were so invested in what it was that we were doing. And it went off. It was great. It's won several American Planning Association awards and Congress for New Urbanism awards. But a key part of gaining this level of trust was saying this is 100% transparent. You can come to everything. If we can, and we're going to do the same thing here, if we conduct a workshop on Wednesday night for the entire community and 140 people come up, but you're working late at the office to get a proposal out and you couldn't be there or your spouse couldn't be there, you can go on the website a week later in the document section and say, community workshop, Wednesday, whatever, click on it, and you'll see a summary of everything that was said. And if you attended the workshop, that's nice, because then you can say, I was at that workshop, they nailed it, that's exactly what we talked about. And these are the things that we prioritize. So it's verification for people who did participate, and it's keeping people informed who were not able to participate. Everything we do is posted online on an interactive project website. Our websites are not static, they're ways to engage throughout the process, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But in Flint, we really noticed that we had to rewrite their comprehensive plan, their master plan, on a land use basis. And then we had to segue directly into rewriting their entire zoning ordinance. That was over 70 years old. But we did with working with people in small groups, large group, one-on-one focus groups, and community-wide, we started focusing on place type. They didn't care about single-family residential, single-family attached residential, multifamily residential, mixed-use residential. All they said was my neighborhood. This is what I want my neighborhood to be like. This is what I want the downtown to be like. I walk to this neighborhood center. This is what I want my neighborhood centers to be like. They didn't talk land use, they talked place. So we created a place type approach, and through that, we developed a place type land use system that wasn't predicated on traditional land use types. It was predicated on 11 different place types. Traditional neighborhoods, green innovation districts, industrial hubs, downtown, neighborhood commercial nodes. And these 11 types of places made up Flint. And everybody instantly could recognize what these places were supposed to be. So from that, we created a land use plan, and then we created a land use intensity wheel. This is now being taught in some schools. When we created this, it didn't exist a few years ago. This allowed you to dial up or dial down any area of town being responsive to market conditions and changing priorities. This allowed you to show what the intensity level was of the different types of land use and where they would go. So between the map, between the intensity allocation, we took each one of the place types and said, this is what it should look like visually in terms of photograph, built form, community activity, gathering place, land use, development intensity, and then we did a 3D visualization of what each one of these places should be like when built out. So even if you don't know anything about planning or zoning, you could say, I get this idea, I know it's going to go here, I'm all in. That's what this area of the town should be. So this is one approach that we did to land use.
Hey, John, can I interrupt just a second?
Please.
The 11 different place types is new to us. Are you thinking about proposing doing something similar for us or using our current stuff?
Correct. And let me clarify that. I'm just trying to show you different ways we've tackled issues unique to different communities. I'm not proposing a place type approach here. Okay. What I want to get here is we moved into a community and in a year and a half engaged 5,000 people, 100% transparent process, and working with them did a system that worked for them. Okay. Not proposing that here. That's an excellent question. Thanks for asking that. And to answer the other part of that, so I'm not proposing a place type here. We're going to do what works for Morrisville, not what we did in Flint. But the process is important and how we got to that uniquely Flint decision. We will get to something uniquely Morrisville here. I can't say right now we will use for sure the land use system classification you have right now. We may come up with a land use classification system working with you and the residents and the business owners that you don't have on the books right now. It may be something different. I don't want to be hamstrung into using what you've done in the past. I also want to depart from that if it works. So we need to be true to Morrisville. That's an excellent question.
Thank you.
So then we do detailed sub-area planning as well, and these are some of the areas that we did there. The other example I want to give is Hudson, Ohio. A more straightforward comprehensive land use plan, but it will begin to demonstrate how detailed we can get for land use planning in a detailed sub-area, an area that is susceptible to change. We've got a couple of sub-areas we're going to be focusing on here. So we did the traditional, we looked at the parks and open space, we looked at land use, but then we began to zero in on specific sub-area plans because they were more volatile and susceptible to developer interest. We then began to do more detailed planning recommendations at a parcel by parcel level, building by building level in some of these sub areas. Should a new community facility go there? A new park go there? A new school go there? A new mixed use development? What about new housing? What about aging in place? This place is going to change in the next 10 years. How should it change? It's not a stable existing residential neighborhood. It's going to be something different. What should that be going forward? We need to take a look at the market dynamics of that and the land use compatibility. What came from that was a very detailed 3D visualization based on community outreach and economic development assessment on how to grow the mixed-use area of downtown into a whole other phase of expansion, and it worked extremely well. So that was Hudson. Another type of one we did was Oak Park, Illinois. Now this is sort of like Chicago, or this is sort of like the nation's neighborhood. Everybody sort of knows Oak Park, Frank Lloyd Wright Studios, historic districts all over, beautiful tree-lined streets. They didn't care about sub-area planning. They didn't care about 3D visualization. It was all about public, open engagement and metrics, implementation, ensuring that we could move the needle on what was most important. So we detailed a very fine line process. We tracked graphically community engagement. These aren't deliverables. These are engagement opportunities for residents. Whether they were one-on-one, at schools, at churches, it didn't matter where they were. We tracked all the different events, and then we had tracked how many people participated. 0 to 25, 25 to 50, more than 50, more than 200, and we tracked level of involvement. By the time we got done this, we had thousands of people participate, and we had volunteers that had donated more than 1,000 hours. We created resident expert task force. We're going to address housing. So we mined the community for the people whose profession was housing. Fair housing advocates, senior housing specialists, someone who teaches, has a PhD in housing technologies at University of Chicago. We identified 11 categories: governmental excellence, housing, economic development, historic preservation, assembled panels of resident experts, coupled them with consultants, steering committee members, village staff members, and actually used that construct to help write the plan with resident expertise. But from that, we were able to get into the weeds on details, metrics, benchmarks, performance indicators. So everything the plan recommended, we said how to do it, what you're measuring, what indicator you're looking for, what the metric is, and what you should be seeing over time. As part of the study, we had to come back a year after adoption and grade the effort of the previous year for the village on how they were rolling this thing out. So 3 different types of plans, 3 totally different approaches, all had a basic process going in that delivered totally different outcomes. It is transparent, it is engaging, it is responsive and nimble. It requires on the participation of residents, business owners, developers, not-for-profits, elected officials, appointed officials, town staff, to derive at the land use plan that is best for each community. So I wanted to sort of highlight several different ways of how we get through this type of a process as sort of our expertise. So another thing that we do besides a lot of face-to-face, outreach has to be effective, it has to be managed, and you have to cast a pretty wide net. You want to catch people one-on-one, you want to catch large groups, you want to catch focus groups, you want to do stuff online, writing, graphically, traditionally face-to-face. We've created ways for people to conduct their own workshops where we or staff aren't even in the room. If your homeowners, if your neighborhood association wants to conduct a workshop, we have a do-it-yourself workshop kit. You pick it up, you conduct your own workshop, you hand the results in, and we tabulate that just as if it's something we did. So we let people really do it from the grassroots. One of the things we do is an interactive project website. We do these for all of our projects. So this is an example of map.social. It's a software that we created about 8 years ago. It used to be called SMAP, Social Mapping Application. We used to use this for all of our projects. But several years ago, people said, we don't have a big planning project for you. We want to license your software. Well, it wasn't its own thing. It was just something we did as a competitive advantage because no one else had this. Several years ago, we spun this off. It's now being used all over the world. It's an online engagement platform, map-based. So here's an example of one that was done for a study that was done in Central Illinois. So you can create several maps. In some communities, we have hundreds of maps, thousands of points of interest. So people will go into an interactive map. You can use your phone, a tablet, PC, Mac, doesn't matter. You can go out in the field and do this. Pull up a map of Morrisville. It's a scene already created. You can zoom in, zoom out. You can drop a point, add a photograph, create a comment, problematic intersections, and we have customized legends, problematic intersections, priority redevelopment sites, community safety concerns, community asset, community eyesore, whatever you want. And you can go in there and drop your points on a map. It's all tied back geographically or geospatially to the town's GIS database. This isn't just a static map or a pretty picture. These are active, live, geocoded points that are tied back to the town's GIS database. For each one of these, a person can snap a photo and attach it to their point on the map. They can type in comments. I like this. I don't like this. I can't cross the street when I'm walking my dog and pushing my stroller. I can't bridge the gap across the street before the light changes. This is an unsafe pedestrian crosswalk. This is a way to engage hundreds of people with thousands of points of interest, and they're not in the same room. But in a way, you used to have to do it all in the same room. So it's incredibly effective. And when we do this, it's on that. We'll have this on part of the interactive project website. So again, you can drop points, add comments. You can thumbs up. You can thumbs down. And the way it's done, so there's transparency, is when you go onto the website, you can go onto this page of the website, and you can click on a composite, and you can see if 400 people completed a map, and there's 3,000 points of interest. You can click on a composite, and you can see one map of Morrisville with everybody's points on it. And you scroll over a comment, you'll see what that person said and why. Now, they can fill up pretty quickly. Like when Dallas did this, they said, we want one map, everybody's using the same map. What we do for 99% of our projects is you would have your own map. You'd log in, and you'd say, Scott's awesome map of Morrisville. You name it whatever you want. Then you start saying, this is what I think, this is what I think. And you can drop it. Then you create a map. You go in, and pretty soon you go into the map gallery, and you can see all these maps of different people that have created maps. You can look at anybody's map you want to. You can thumbs up or thumbs down any comment that they have. If you only care about problematic intersections, you can go to the map gallery, click on problematic intersection, everything else disappears, and you'll see a map with everybody's problematic intersections highlighted. So police chiefs can query it for public safety concerns. Public works directors can query it for problematic intersections. Economic development directors can query it for development opportunity sites. It's a remarkable tool. So this will be one of the ways we begin to engage people. We've got a bunch. It's fully transparent, fully interactive. You can do it at home in your pajamas, eating cold pizza at 3 in the morning if you want to. It doesn't matter. So this is one of the tools we'll have on our website. You had a question? I thought you did.
No, I just really like the citizen engagement component of it, because I think the last time we did a land use plan was in 2009, and lately we've been getting a lot of, just citizens talking about, decisions were made in terms of just zoning, even though we have UDO schools, for example. So I can see this, really being a great tool for our citizens to take more proactive action themselves, to come in there and actually research. So it's sort of like this open data trend where citizens are engaging data themselves to come back to their elected officials and say, here's an app I created, or we're making progress and more so with crime mapping and things like that. But I think this would be a really powerful tool when I start thinking of the applications, given a lot of the feedback this council has been getting over the last few months.
Yeah, it's great. And you bring an excellent point up. When you ask anybody who's married, you can't get two people to agree on everything all the time. Right? You just can't. People are going to disagree every once in a while. Try getting an entire community to agree on everything. It just doesn't happen. But what we have found, whether it's a community engagement where you're sitting down one-on-one or you've got 200 people in a room, People want to be listened to. They want to know you heard them. They want to know you're respectful of their opinion. That's more important than the fact that you agree or disagree with them. Hey, listen, I sat down with Tom. I explained myself. I know he knows what I'm thinking. He listened to me. He relayed back to me what he thought I said, and he nailed it right. And we agreed on these things. We disagreed on these things, but I really appreciate the fact that he listened to me. And this level of transparency and engagement on all these fronts begins to get at a level of authenticity. It gets to a sense of community stewardship. This is not going to be our plan, all right? It's not going to be staff's plan. And no offense to any elected official, it's not going to be your plan. If it's not the community's plan and perceived to be that, it won't have great legs, and it won't serve as the foundation for decision-making that it needs to help evaluate development and make an informed decision, to help prioritize capital improvements, to maybe decide better where future gateways ought to go based on projected development locations. This will inform so many different things. And the more people who feel a sense of stewardship for this document, the better it will serve you going forward. And that's what our process is built around.
So can I just ask a quick question?
Sure.
I think we're getting sidetracked into a software. This would be used during the process, and then you would extrapolate all of this data, the 5,000 different maps that people create, and you have a software system or something that would extrapolate that data then to pinpoint, or is it a human being going map by map by map, comment by comment by comment? Because how do you utilize it,
right,
into a measurable piece of data? And then were you recommending that this stays live so that people can use this for the next 15 years?
Well, no, but
or is this just part of the process of putting the plan together?
It's just part of the process. So let me get a couple of things. What I've been talking about for the last few minutes about engagement and transparency, I've already moved past the software thing. I'm talking about all of it. So that was just one little piece. You can set this up to get weekly or monthly reports that will come to you automatically. Chicago uses this. They get reports every morning on some projects. When we walk into the office, they fired it up, and there's a morning report on who commented on what the night before. It's all automated. This is not going to require a heavy lift to go through and for us or for anybody on your team to begin to summarize, to look through all these maps. It all happens automatically. And it's not just a software that does it. It's the city's GIS database. So it is a data layer you guys get to keep when we're out of here. Like a land use layer or a zoning layer or anything else. So again, I don't mean to emphasize it more. It's just we try to do a lot of things to do a better job at this process and ultimately the product of a good plan. This is just one of the quivers in our arrow, one of the arrows in our quiver that will help us begin to deliver this. So we just think it's really important. So with that, what I'm going to do, and again, these are just sort of the different menus. You can query it by clicking on any one of these: public safety, undesirable uses, development priority sites. You can click on any one of these and see those composite maps by topic if you want. So it's just real easy to use. And this is what some of the dashboards look like. So, and then what we do is, as people write in their comments, we will word cloud the most common things. So if parks comes up a lot, you can go to the word cloud and click on any one of those words. Those are active words, and it will highlight the map on where those things were said. So it's just a different way of getting at the data that you were talking about. We live in a day and age where data is not the problem. The problem is we have too much data. And too much data, if not managed, is just a list. And a list that's 40 pages long does nothing for me. But if I can condense that, process it, and visualize it into 5 key things, that's meaningful to me. So what I want to do now is I'm going to turn it over to staff, and they're going to comment on a few things. Then Michi will go through the scope of work.
Okay, so a couple of you have asked exactly where are we now. And the simplest way to really answer that is say, here's our current land use map. It's identified into multiple categories. There's some grayed out areas. That's because there's sub-area plans out there that have additional layers. So right now, we're working from 3 different plans with 3 different sets of labeling as with regards to our current land uses. So where are we going? It's kind of another question that I seem to be asked by a couple of the council members. Well, I think it was kind of clearly explained of some of the data that we'll be using, or the approaches we'll be using to help to prepare the plan. But we are going to provide a summary of what's been accomplished to date in the 2009 plan. I think it's important to acknowledge our accomplishments and state when they happened and how they happened and give credit to the council through the years for the different funding opportunities that have been provided. We're going to build consensus. What are the best uses for the certain area? I'm not going to tell you that the map I just showed you is the right way to go. Nor am I going to say that the wheel that you saw is the way that we're going to go. And we're going to see as this kind of works its way through the process the direction that we're going to head. What are some of my kind of expectations as the director? I've been asked time and time again, is there ways to better define our activity centers? In theory, somebody can build an activity center and build one use. That's not what they are. So how are we going to better define what those are as we move through the process? Single family, if you kind of dig into the plan as it currently is, it's not necessarily clear, and it certainly doesn't necessarily match what's in our UDO. So those are some clarities that I expect to see occur as we move forward. And last is, there will be, action items that are developed in this plan that potentially will identify, and I expect that they will identify, amendments to the UDO. So after this process ends and it's adopted by council, I expect that we're going to amend the UDO in many ways to make sure that we are accomplishing the goals set forth in our new land use plan. Now next, I do not expect each of you to be able to read this. It's more for a visual, and Brad can pass around an individual one as well. That I've been asked, why 2 years? Why does it take so long? Well, I think hearing all the different input processes that will kind of explain, I quickly kind of captured a visual here. So this is the proposed scope of work and the multiple phases that are involved. So everything that I've been outlined in red includes public input. And one of the key things that's included in there is a technical review committee. This was added at the request of Councilmember Schlink. He said it was really important to him to see that there's a group that involves citizens as well. So this is going to be a group comprised of multiple stakeholders, but it is going to include citizens here in Morrisville. The next is the different phases, how we have the Planning and Zoning Board involvement, that's outlined in blue, town councils in green, and then we really have some key deliverables. So as you can see in each phase, we're gathering information, we're producing a deliverable. We're then gathering additional information using that deliverable plus the new information and developing a new deliverable. So they're adding on. So each time we're adding a different layer to the plan that ultimately we'll get to the part where you'll see little circles. This is where the timeline, in my opinion, is going to have the greatest amount of change. We've really allocated, if you look 2 months, it's not accurate. It was just kind of a good stopping point. This is when the plan goes back to the public through the Planning and Zoning Board and the Town Council. This process can happen as quickly as 4 months. It can easily happen in a year. It just depends, and there's a lot of factors. So that's where some flexibility comes, that we'll have to be flexible with regards to if I say the timeline's taking longer. It's simply, that's the one where it's hard to predict what will occur. But I just wanted to provide this everybody a quick overview. So since several of you had asked why it takes 2 years, I think this kind of provides a better visual. And the fact that we're doing sub-area plans as well, those can happen independently outside of a land use plan. We opted to include them as part of the land use plan. I thought we would produce a better output of a plan versus doing separate processes, which combined take more time and more money. I'm going to turn the presentation back over to Michio so he can talk more in detail about really where we're going with regards to the scope of work.
Quick question for you.
Yes, sir.
Something that we do and something we do that in our software world is code reuse, and I'm just looking at this thing. For example, in phase 3, it is demographic analysis and existing, features for open space. More on demographic analysis. Just an example. We have done this for the Parks and Recs, a demographic analysis. So that data, we do have it, right? So pretty much, I do not know what different data would you be using for a UDO versus a Parks and Recs. Is it the same kind of data or a different kind of data to do it?
To answer your question,
some components.
So the census does do updates every year. So there are going to be some slight differences. I can let the consultant team kind of answer a little more, but there are some differences there.
Right, and you bring up an excellent point, so I'm glad you did that. Michio will cover that when he goes through the process. But one of the key things we want to make sure of is we don't want to dismiss previous efforts and work already done.
So this is just recent. We are all starting at the same point, like Parks and Recs. We're going through that, and the transportation we're doing, and we do see a lot of effort done for the demographic analysis and have a whole chapter. That's, I think, pretty much the base essence of how the planning is done for the next 10 years.
Right.
So those kind of things.
And when we do, what I'm getting at is when we do our existing conditions phase of the process, we have to come up to speed on the good, the bad, the ugly, every variable, if we're going to be honest going forward. And a big part of that is mining work that's already been done or in process. So we will look at every report, every study, every research piece, every plan, the zoning ordinance, housing studies, parks and rec studies that had demographic data. And where there is a need for more because there's a gap in what we've reviewed, we will fill that gap.
Okay.
Where something has been done and is current and is relevant and it's there, we will mine it and say, this is great, we're going to use it. And we'll say, we used what was done here, it was spot on, it's still current, we're going to plug that into our process.
Perfect.
So if it's relevant, we will review it, and if it's relevant, we will pull it in. If there's a gap in data that we need, we will fill that gap and identify, we will fill a gap and identify why we have to.
That's my question. Done. Thank you.
So I'm just going to make a comment if I can, because, and I know we're going to probably ask questions in a minute, but this will give staff and you all time to think about it. So one of the concerns that I have just in general is that Morrisville is not a 30 square mile town with 50,000 acres of what we can do with it. And one of the concerns about, for me, taking 2 or 3 years is we're going to be planning for something. And as we know, just by looking at what's happened in the last year with the rate of development, we will potentially develop ourselves out of what we're planning to do. And so I just wanted to kind of think about that and how do we potentially slow some things down so that a plan can actually go into place, because in 5 years we're going to be doing a redevelopment plan rather than a strategic plan is my fear. And the other thing I was just going to say is a lot of times we who live here, which is why I'm glad that you live in a different area, is we sometimes can not see the forest for the trees. And so I know one of the concerns that I've heard a lot is we don't have an identity, and Morrisville is sort of a patchwork. And there's no rhyme or reason to certain things, to be honest with you. There's no flow to anything. It's just connectors and heavy traffic and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So those would be things that I'd be curious. But the bigger piece for me is how do we put a plan together when we're, practically everything that can potentially be developed, there's a plan to already develop it almost, or some developer that is planning on buying it if they can. So just something to think about, and then we can chat about it. That's the thing that is sticking with me, is that we're
right. I mean, you bring up a great point. I mean, I find it quite remarkable that in 1990 your population was just over 1,000 people. I mean, we're from Chicago. We're from the Rust Belt. We lose population. So this is definitely an exciting opportunity for us. But we do appreciate that, there is change is just constant here. But I guess I would say the first thing that comes to mind is I think it's better to go through a planning process and experience that rapid change than to experience that rapid change without having any plan in place. And in addition, when we put together plans, they're meant to be living documents, so that they're meant to be used, by staff, by policymakers, every day, basically. And they're meant to be amended. They're meant to be flexible. They have a long-term vision in mind, and they're not reactionary. So, but we'd be happy to talk about that some more. But so what I'll do right now is I'm going to go through the 7-step scope of work. So on this slide here, this provides an overview of all 7 steps with anticipated completion dates to the right. So right now we are in phase 2. Well, technically, this workshop here is part of phase 1. This is the first of 3 workshops we'll have with the town council. In May, we will be beginning the bulk of, or completing the bulk of our community outreach and engagement activities. Outreach and engagement is something that is going to go on throughout the entire planning process, but we put a good amount of focus on the doing this outreach and engagement up front at the outset of the project, so that, you know, when we get into plan making, those planning decisions can be informed by what we heard during the outreach process. So phase 3, which we'll be working on that. That'll be completed in the fall, and that will move us into developing community vision as well as community goals. So once that's wrapped up, that's where we've slotted in the sub-area plans. We're looking at 2 different areas, the Wake Tech RTP campus area and the McCrimmon Parkway Extension area. So that's where we're going to do that detailed type planning that is to include 3D visualizations. I think John showed some slides with Flint, Michigan, and Hudson, Ohio. That's something we'll be doing for those 2 areas here in Morrisville. So phase 6, community-wide plans and policies. This is where we pull everything together. And then this all culminates with a final plan document, land use plan update document, and adoption. So zooming in here a little bit to project initiation, you'll see that task 1A, staff coordination meeting number 1. We're meeting 7 separate times with staff, at least once during each phase of the project. This is just a face-to-face meeting. We are coordinating with Brad and I speak weekly at least, and I anticipate that we'll continue to do that. So in March, we met with the Planning and Zoning Board, and we did a workshop activity similar to the one we're going to do tonight with you. So that is phase 1. Phase 2. As I mentioned, is community outreach and engagement. And I can't emphasize it enough. This is such a critical piece of our planning process. The input we get from the community is going to inform the land use plan that you adopt, in 18 months, 18 to 24 months, maybe 16, So we have several different types of outreach activities that we use in our planning process. And as John mentioned, you have your traditional type outreach activities where you're engaging folks face to face, maybe at a workshop, a focus group, an interview, a one-on-one interview. But we also have more tech-driven engagement methodologies that we use, such as map.social that John spent some time describing. But we also have, what we call do-it-yourself kits, where we can give a packet of information to maybe a homeowners association or a church group, and it will give detailed instructions for them on how they can run their own workshop. The idea here is that these different outreach engagement tools allow us to engage as wide a swath as folks as possible, because not everyone is going to come to a community workshop, maybe that's their favorite television shows on that night, and people who have their favorite television shows don't like to miss them. And some people just aren't comfortable in, public setting like that. So we're going to employ as many of these tools as possible so that we can we can make sure that once this plan is completed, everyone had input. And so if everyone feels they have input, that's where you get buy-in. Another outreach method we use is something we call immersive outreach. This is where we're trying to kind of get folks that maybe fell through the cracks. we are working with the town staff right now on creating little postcards, right, where folks can answer survey questions, drop it in the mail, drop it at town hall. Takes 2 minutes, right? They don't have to register their email address. They don't have to, just pull out a pen, fill it out, and put it in the mail. Social media will work with the town on creating updates. Where, one of the things that we do a lot of, that we take a lot of pride in, is our design work. We are working with Brad right now on creating, posters for these workshops, all types of promotional collateral. So social media will work with your staff to develop different updates, and all of this will link also to the interactive project website. So phase 3 of the project is the existing conditions analysis. Again, as John mentioned, the first part of this is we're going to look at all of your existing plans, studies, reports, see what we can, most notably, we're going to look at the 2009 land use plan, but there'll be other documents that we look at as well. And whatever we can call out of that's relevant, we will use it. So the question about demographic data, if something's been done already, I'm the first guy to say, well, I'm not going to reinvent the wheel. That would be inefficient use of our time. So anywhere where we can save time, if something's already been done, we can shift that attention somewhere else. So if we don't have to do a certain type of demographic analysis because it was just done a few months ago, we might be able to add on a couple more focus groups. The primary component of the existing conditions analysis is the inventory of existing land use within the town. So we will have folks from our office here in the field documenting current land uses for every single parcel in Morrisville. This is going to be your snapshot of where you are now. And I'm pretty excited. I think it's going to look pretty interesting when you put it up against the 2009 current land use map. So this phase of the project will be wrapped up or will culminate in the production of 2 deliverables, an existing conditions report that includes a summary of all of that data collection that I discussed, as well as a trends and influences summary memo. So these deliverables are going to encapsulate what we have learned in the field, the analysis we've done back in the office, and the outreach and engagement activities in phase 2. And of course, this is in phase 3. We're going to have our third staff coordination meeting, and then the first meeting of the technical review committee that Courtney mentioned earlier. We'll also provide an update presentation open to the entire community to see, so we hear there's a land use plan update. Where are you guys in the process? Okay, so phase 4, community vision and goals. So we have heard what the community has to say. We have done our analysis of existing conditions. This is the phase where we develop a vision statement for this land use plan update, as well as preliminary goals and preliminary policies that will serve as the framework for the land use plan update document. So you see Task Force C. So the next time we meet with you in a workshop setting like this, we'll have done all the outreach, we'll have done the existing conditions analysis, you'll have had a chance to absorb some of that, and we'll start discussing, the vision for the future. So phase 5, the sub-area plans. As I mentioned, we're honing in on 2 areas, Wake Tech RTP campus, as well as the McCremon Park extension area. So in addition to the plans and the 3D visualizations, we'll also have detailed recommendations for these two particular areas. And as John mentioned, we feel it's very important that our land use recommendations be rooted in market realities. So a key component of this phase of the project is Task 5F, which is the sub-area market assessments. So anything we're proposing will be grounded in some sort of analytical rigor. All right.
Mitchell, if I could ask you, Councilmember Wendell alluded to the fact that we don't have a whole lot of other areas that are not yet developed.
Right.
Is it possible to sort of do some kind of exercise that you kind of also identify other areas that are susceptible to development, as John said, and give us some ideas of what to do with those too? Like almost sub-area, or something, just because there's only certain places where we can move the needle, and we're looking for your expertise to help us with those too, not just the sub-areas.
Right, definitely. So the sub-areas are when we really, it's like we're looking at things microscopically almost. But that doesn't mean that those same principles that we're going to use in looking at those areas, that doesn't mean we're not going to apply them community-wide. So, for instance, is it on this? Oh, yeah, so task 6D. So part of this phase, as part of this phase, we'll be preparing this community-wide fiscal impact model, right? So we'll use this fiscal impact analysis in the sub-area plans. But we'll also be creating this model so that we can assess fiscal impacts of these land use recommendations community-wide. So I don't want you to think that because we're looking at these two sub-areas at such a great level of detail that we're going to kind of ignore recommendations for the rest, for other areas. We will identify, as part of this plan in this phase, we'll identify other areas, of Morrisville that may be susceptible to change or that, have more potential for redevelopment potential compared to other areas. So, yeah, I think maybe it's best to just think of this. Everything's sort of going to get a sub-area treatment. It's just a sub-area treatment for the sub-areas is really microscopic.
Mr. Mayor, I was just going to say real quickly, it just came across the wire that former First Lady Barbara Bush passed away. So I just wanted to maybe take a moment. I felt a little bit compelled to say that just now. It was sad news. Just came across the wire.
That is sad news. She was a great woman.
She was a great woman.
Yeah. Councilmember Garamella?
Yeah. Question I have is, you pointed out that in your thing you'll show from 2009 to 2019. You'll show how the land use has been changed, right? In your thing. Just thinking loud here. We don't have a whole lot moving forward in future development other than the submarket that the scope area is. But we do have redevelopment in the future, which is again like we do these kind of things for the next 10 years. Scope, thinking like transportation point, like what would come there. Will you have something that this could be a future potential redevelopment down the lane, even though it is not set for like I'm giving an example, shopping complex or an old neighborhood or like something like a commercial unit, even though he's not ready for it. But you're just setting the trend that this could be potentially for the redevelopment. Who would come up with those kind of things? Is it something you will come up in the future from 2019 to 2029 pattern?
Right. Yeah. I mean, we very likely will identify or make recommendations like that because of the long-term time frame that we're looking at for this land use plan update. So, yeah, I think it's kind of, I mentioned we're from a place that loses population. We're also from a place that also, we don't have any developable land anymore either. So, yeah, invariably, 20 years down the road, there will be parts of Morrisville that will be redeveloped in some way or another. So we will, we will very well, likely will identify those areas that probably the community will benefit from a redevelopment of those properties.
Okay. The reason that it's a good conversation that we are having, not a conversation we are having there when it comes, is constantly our hands are tied to our UDO.
Right.
And as like Mr. Housel said, is every town is unique to what it is, and we are unique to our county, where we have 50% commercial, 50% residential, and many elected officials are envy of our town because that's not a ratio that other towns have. But when that ratio could change up and down, but more for us is how do we fit it in with the future. And when we ask, pretty much we are shown the UDO plans, which we are binding documents, and how it's the population growth and population smart growth, which I would say smart growth is always good. How would you? What are your indicators that would really shape your predictable things? Is it something, a different conversation to have? Those are the kind of things I'm looking for.
Right. Yeah. So I'd hate to
not going to
speculate too much. Part of this. So these first two phases of this project, as John mentioned, we're not coming in from out of town saying, "Hey, this Morrisville, this is the way the future should look." We like to just kind of sit back and listen during these first two phases. Certainly we could have recommendations that might conflict with current policy. But I will tell you that a recommendation that conflicts with current policy, that was informed by things we heard from the community. So, we would identify those conflicts, and where appropriate, we would say, perhaps you should change this policy.
I'm just going to kind of add. So remember at the very beginning, John was very clear that zoning doesn't feed the plan. The plan is what defines your zoning. So that's what happened today. So we had a 2009 land use plan. It set up a new typology of land uses for the town. The town then created the UDO and rezoned the town. It was a townwide rezoning. That's a perfect example of what he's saying. And if you go back kind of a couple slides ago, I said, where are we headed? I know that we're probably going to have changes to the UDO. I just can't tell you what they are, because staying true to that, we're going to have a new plan, and we're going to have a new vision, and we're going to have to change the UDO. So don't think you're so, I keep hearing a lot of, we're, almost hog-tied, by this, UDO.
No, not. I don't think you took me. Right.
No, it's
a 10-year.
That continues time and time again.
It's a 10-year thing, right? That we change this, or like in the middle we do change it. So other than this sub-area plans that we're doing it, how do we, make sure that this is evolving? Is the key,
And that may be where we go back 3 years down the road and ask for an updated community-wide fiscal impact model. So it's usually probably only, correct me if I'm wrong, valid for approximately 3 years. It's typically the time frame, if I'm wrong.
Yeah, something like that. So those are.
So we'll go back, and so when there are decisions, this site, the lease the 50-year lease for X tenant has finally expired. The site is now 100% right for redevelopment. We will use that community-wide fiscal impact model to help feed that rezoning. And going back to why we only are choosing kind of two sub-area plans, there's a couple of areas that are actually, if we're being honest, are really right for redevelopment. We chose kind of green areas that are primarily right for redevelopment. We did not choose the old outlet site because the market, the person selling it, they're going to have their own art market analysis that will handle that. And the only other area that we're going to see a lot of change is the town core. And staff did not include that in the proposal because DFI has already prepared the market analysis for that, and there was no need in going back and reinventing the wheel. Just kind of wanted to, that had not been stated really at this point. I just kind of wanted to put that out there on the table.
So, but we are going to take into consideration those things so that it all fits together, though, right? So we're not going to have disproportionate.
Exactly, and that's the advantage of doing a sub-area plan at the same exact time you're doing the town-wide plan.
Right.
And now's the time, if I hear what you're saying, we got to break the paradigm of what we've done. This is a time where we have a chance to go anew. Right. That's what the whole process is, right?
You're exactly
what you had. Don't stick to what we had,
right?
Or don't be tied to it. Right. But we get to refresh it. Yeah.
And I guess that's one thing I'm thinking of, and I guess this is overly simplified, but as you go through this planning process, don't hamstring your vision with the zoning that's on the ground now. Go through this process as if zoning doesn't exist. Well, what matters, zoning's not going to impact your planning thought. So what is? What residents like, what's market viable, the fiscal economic analysis, the regional climate for what development is like, the different types of character you'd like to see in different areas. You want to be able to springboard off of opportunity and sort of supercharge private investment in key areas to see something materialize that the town would like for itself. At no point when factoring in all those variables does zoning come into play. But we see time and time, a town will say like, well, yeah, we'd like to do commercial. There's some real cool mixed use, but it's zoned single family. Well, change the zoning. This process should allow you the ability to articulate a vision for Morrisville, what you want to accomplish where, and the character of that in every corner of this community. Once you have affirmation as to that vision, and you have consensus as to that vision, and you know it's economically viable, then amend the UDO to help deliver that vision. Do not be hamstrung by the UDO to not get you what you say you want for yourself. Think of it that way. And then the other thing with regard to development, don't think of vacant sites as development sites only. Could be almost anything. And the bottom line, there's one true saying with development now, I think. If it's easy, it's been done. What's left to do takes work. It's often redevelopment, not greenfield development. You're tearing something down to build something new. There might be proximity because there's a nearby neighborhood that's sort of like, change is scary. Development's tough. But if you put together a process like what Misha was just outlined, when you get to that end game, people can say, you know what? I might disagree with a couple of things, but I am rock solid with where we are. This is what this community should be doing. Well, let's get to doing it. And that's what this process should deliver. So don't be hamstrung by zoning, because in terms of planning and articulating a vision, it's irrelevant. It's relevant in delivering that vision. We're not there yet. So.
Okay, so that brings us to the final phase of the scope of work, phase 7. This is where we prepare the actual land use plan update document. As you can see, this phase is mostly comprised of meetings, as well as a community open house. So this is when, we bring the plan to the community and say, hey, all that work, this is what it's resulted in. And then this will finally lead into a final plan that can be adopted. So that's the conclusion of our presentation. So the next thing that we wanted to do was move into our workshop activity. Were there...
Before we do that, traditionally, Mayor, I believe we take around 8 o'clock. Is that something you would like to do?
Do you feel the need? Or maybe just a 5-minute bio break. Okay.
Sure, because you said an hour now.
Yeah, it won't be any more than an hour for this, not at all. And it's a very casual sort of interactive.
It's an additional hour?
Pardon?
The upcoming part is an hour?
Yeah, at the most. But probably with this size group, probably not even that.
Okay. Sounds like we have consensus for a 5-minute break.
I'm going to make it 2 hours.
Let's take a break, reconvene at 8:20. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to go through sort of a workshop exercise with you, and it's similar to the workshop that we will conduct through the first, the outreach phase of the assignment. At the beginning of the assignment, like Micho said, we don't want to come in like a bull in a china shop and say, here's what you should be doing. We wanted to sit back and listen and be respectful and listen to what people who know this community the most think. And we do that by asking the same types of questions to the different groups of people, and then we can sort of compare and contrast answers. So the format we're going to go through today, we're going to go through it in about a half an hour with this group. When we engage the public throughout the process, we limit engagement to an hour and a half whenever we meet with them. Because as exciting as I get about planning and zoning, to the average resident, after 90 minutes, they may have enough. So we manage it at 90-minute intervals. The only exception might be the visioning workshop in step 4. That's typically like a 2-hour exercise. But here we're going to do it much more quickly because it's designed to be done for crowds of 100 plus. So I'm going to give everybody a sheet of paper, questionnaire. You will be handing these back in. You don't have to put your names on or anything, but we will be collecting them. And I'm going to be like a school teacher. Don't start writing anything yet until I tell you what to do. Just sort of sit tight. All right. So does everybody have one of these? And something to write with. Okay. So we're going to go through this exercise, and we're going to be collecting your papers. So write as legibly as possible. For some of you, that's probably harder than others. I know it's a big ask, but we have to take these back to the shop and attempt to decipher and summarize them. So we have to read these. And brevity is appreciated. You can write a novel if you'd like, but the minimum amount of words to get your point across. We walk into a workshop and you see the lady in the front row, she's like, and then you know you're in trouble because she's filling up space. So I want you to focus first on question number 1 and only question 1. Do not answer 2, 3, and 4. And question number 1 says, identify 5 issues or concerns confronting the town of Morrisville right now. And we don't want to limit what you think the answers are, but what do you think are the five of the most important issues that this community is facing? And when I say town, I don't necessarily mean the town government. I mean the community. So what are 5 of the top most important issues that this community is facing? Write those down for question number 1. And when you get those done, you can put your head on the table, put your pencil down.
Only 5?
Yeah, only 5. Yeah. Well, 5, what do you think?
These are land use issues.
They can be related to land use. They can be things that land use might have an impact on, but they might not be. Public safety, or I mean, it could be anything you think are.
Or they might have an impact on
Yeah,
land use.
yeah. It could be a new school location. It could be public safety. It could be improved activity centers. Who knows? But could be lack of image and identity. It may not be directly land use related, but any 5 issues that you think the community is facing right now. And I'm 1 in 9 kids, so I tend to talk pretty quickly. So if I get talking too fast, just tell me to slow down. It was sort of a survival mechanism growing up.
So you're number 5 out of 9?
I am 8.
Wow.
Who here has lived in Morrisville the longest? Anybody more than 10 years? More than 20 years?
96.
Okay. I stop asking after like 20 or 30. People get mad at me. Lived here less than 5? Oh, there you go. Over there. All right. See where people are coming from.
And then we have not at all category.
Yeah, right. Well, that's the other thing, right? The not at all category. And then when you have those written down, we'll exercise real quick. I like the new proposed signage, by the way, that she was going through. All right.
Which one? The gateway?
The gateway signage that she was going through earlier, I thought it looked nice. And I agree, I like optional.
We-
I like
we both
optional.
agreed
We both
option
like
one.
optional.
Yeah.
We're sitting in the back, rooting for optional.
Oh, thank you.
All right, so it looks like you're done writing. So here's what we're going to do. And again, the reason we do this, we also want you to know when we meet with the entire community the exercise we take them through. So we're probably not going to write down just for purposes of time. Normally when we do this, if we have 100 people in the audience or 50 or 200, when someone says something, we write it down and number it. And so the room will be lined with these things. But with a small group, we won't write that down today, and Micho's going to record it. So just be tuned in and listen to what everyone is saying. So we're going to go around the room, and when I get to you, I want you to give me one of the things you wrote down. Not all 5, just one of them. And then, again, Micho will record it. What we typically would do is we would record it on the easel so everybody in the room can see it, all right? And then we'll go to you, and you give me one of your things, but don't repeat something that's already been said. So if he says, we need more dog parks, all right, and we write dog parks up there, when we get to you, it may be your most burning desire to have more dog parks. We don't need to hear it again. We already heard it once. When we collect your papers, we'll see how many people wrote it down. What we're trying to get at is a cumulative list of issues. So don't repeat anything. Give me one item only. And if we get to you and all of yours are already up there, you can say all of mine are already up there. It's amazing in a room even of 200 people how quickly you can get consensus, which is what you're sort of shooting for. So we'll start over here. Give us one of the things you wrote down.
I have TOD and mass transit.
Okay. The need for it, or or
it's coming. So how are we going to manage
accommodate it? Okay, good. Okay, well, let's go right down the line.
So one that I have is no sense of community identity.
And I have, we have old development that's ripe for redevelopment, highest and best use.
Good.
Traffic, cars congesting our roads.
At least between 6 and 6:30, we found out. So.
Lack of schools.
Okay.
Middle school and high school.
Middle and high?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Confronting smart growth.
Okay. Continuing smart growth. Staff, would you like to participate, or are you observing this evening?
Oh, I'm just observing and taking notes.
Observing. Okay. So we're going to go around again. Don't repeat something somebody's already said, but go give us another one off your list.
Homeowner. Ooh. Home ownership currently less than 50%. It's been that way for 20 years. It's not going to get any more unless we do something.
Okay. So owner occupied versus rental?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a sense of not having a reason to come to Morrisville unless you live here. So nothing to draw people to come visit.
Draw a destination.
Okay. Need for additional parkland, both passive and programmed.
She was looking when you...
No, I didn't look. I didn't look at anything.
Need more mobility options, bike ped.
Mobility options, good. And you said bike ped.
Traffic congestion. Still a concern.
That one we already, you gave it last time around, so let's have a different one.
It's okay if they're all,
Yeah, they're
all done.
They're all done.
Okay, good enough. So we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 before we hit and all done, and that's not uncommon. So,
something that the Carolina Population Center said that we're losing population as a transient town, where we are losing our population to our neighboring towns as a zip code. So the reason for why and how that we can retain our population.
very good. You asked the right question. Why?
It's a targeted age group. When you delve down into the numbers, you'll see what he's talking about.
Is it?
When people
Just after that.
traditionally, when you're hitting the middle high school age, that's when we're beginning to see the dip in housing. Can't tell you that's the. I mean, I've heard multiple reasons why. Won't add that to the list, but just to kind of clarify his point.
Interesting. No, that's great. I'm not the greatest at it, but you got a ballpark on the age. I'll go back around again.
I would say other nearby towns' development impacts us.
Right.
And I would say that could be why, for a while, we used to get all the apartments because it was cheaper to build apartments. And the other towns would say, you can have the apartments, we want single family.
Right. Interesting.
Mine are mostly sensing. So a sense that we're 10 square miles of residential HOAs.
What is that? I didn't get that.
The sense that Morrisville is made up of just a quagmire of HOAs with some.
So it's not a sense of,
Pitfalls
it's
in
not a
between.
sense
There's
of
no
community,
sense
it's
of
just a conglomeration of HOAs.
Yeah.
It's sort of a, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, our borders are defined and we will not grow anymore. We know exactly how far we can go. So therefore, it requires fiscal impact analysis when we
Right.
talk about future redevelopment.
That can be a good thing, and it can force a level of more responsible and well thought out development. It can also be a hindrance because you don't have the room to do things that might require more space. So it's a pro and a con. Yeah, it's good.
I'm kind of cheating. This wasn't one of my 5, but we are more of a pass-through community for traffic. So it's sort of with the traffic congestion, but that's a concern that people just drive through
Right.
here.
You're good.
Putting it in a different manner, because this is something we talked in our joint Cary Morrisville, is the land use plan for neighboring for Cary, and Cary does it with Apex, is on the perimeter of their properties which assign with us. It's always what they do, and it all comes down to a pass-through. We end up getting some of the things that they don't do it, or vice versa. So, like a transition of how do we basically work with our neighboring towns, that it is kind of blending in, not just confined to our land use.
Well, because they're not, an example, so they're not fulfilling their share of the rental residential market, you're getting more of it than you would be if they had some of it as well.
Something like that, like where.
Just the border you're talking about.
Borders.
Okay.
Geographical borders where, we are a hot rental market.
Okay.
In other locations. And how would we work with that?
Okay, good.
It has to be more, I don't know how to put that.
Well, I kind of get what you're saying.
I'll say this one for Vicki. Affordable housing, workforce housing. How does it fit in? Because I heard on the news today, Durham, Raleigh are in the top 10 for towns to most affordable.
Right.
250 across the country, and Charlotte's even affordable.
Right. You're good?
I'm done, Tim.
You're good?
I'm done.
You're good? Good?
The public safety and public works, right? Those more of concerns are more of like how do you when we do our UDO planning, right? We kind of more look towards for others, but we kind of discount for our town itself.
Okay.
So how do we plan for our internal future growth?
Okay. Municipal facilities,
Municipal
including
facility.
fire station.
Fire stations
Is something
and
that's come up.
strategic locations. We do studies, obviously, for each and every component of it.
Right.
But, that's part of...
That's a big part of land use planning, is making sure you can accommodate those community facilities, yeah, for sure. And did you have any other ones?
Nope.
Okay, so did you have any other ones? We're good now.
Parks is, someone put it, right? You all
Park,
know
yep.
Parks, okay, perfect.
Okay, so we've been around now. How many what did you got?
4.
No, how many?
Oh, 18.
18. So from TOD, lack of identity, no new development, no development opportunities, but a lot of redevelopment opportunities. Traffic, lack of schools, need to be smart growth. Home ownership versus rental. Need for more parkland, but where to sort of get it. Losing population to neighboring towns, high school age, or it's a high school, it's a sort of post, when kids get into high school age, those are the families that are looking.
Middle or high school?
All right.
Middle and high school both.
Okay, middle and high school, okay. Interaction with adjacent development, sort of a conglomeration of the sense it's a conglomeration of homeowners associations, border areas, defining them, and their limitation to be able to grow out because the borders are defined. So there's a public safety, public works, or the other community facilities providing for them the issue of workforce housing. So we've gotten 18.
I got
go ahead.
one more
Sure.
to add. One more, the main thing of what we see is, I said early on, is our mix of 50% commercial, 50%
Right.
residential, and in our land use, or in our rezoning land use.
Okay.
And which is a healthy balance, and how do we go in a smart use,
Okay.
to balance it out.
All right, good. So what we do at this point, so now we're going to look at question number 2, but before you write anything, what we typically do now when we have the community workshop is we'll have 10 of these Post-its up on the wall with, in this case, we'd have 18%, so we'll have 40 or 50 or more issues up there. They're all numbered. And then what we say is, now from the list that you and your neighbors have generated, so it's not the consultants, it's not staff, the city, town council isn't here saying this is a list you have to pick from. This is the list that this room came up with. All right? So from the list that you identified as issues facing this community, pick the 3 in order of importance that you think are the most important 3. So it's tough when there's 40 or 50 up there, or it's tough when there's 18 up there. And they can see them. So now we just read them off so they're fresh in your mind because it's a smaller group. But you have to pick 3. Now, sometimes people will say, well, parking is bad and traffic is bad and we're a pass-through community. I'm going to lump those all together as transportation issues. You can't group. We'll group. When we go through and assess, we can say traffic-related issues were by far the most important. Here's some of what we heard. You have to pick from the list that's up there the 3 most important issues in order of importance. The number 1 issue, the number 2, the number 3. We know it's hard. So from what you remember from our discussion and what we read off, just write in order of importance. The number 1 issue, the number 2, the number 3.
Aaron, can we maybe get that on the Elmo? So everyone could just sort of see his thing? His list?
Well, I can put my chicken scratch list on Elmo.
Yeah, mine's more chicken scratchy, and Michio's has got his as well.
Just a thought.
So if you
Right.
want interpretations, let me know.
That we can work from our mind, and
Right.
that might bring something else up.
And what we do when we do it with a larger group is we just say, listen, you can just say number 2, number 18, and number 27. You don't have to rewrite it, just write the number.
Pretty much can be summed to 3 easily.
And the nice thing is, when we collect everybody's paper, whether it's 100 people or 8 people, we will summarize them, so we'll see those trends. But it's nice for the room in real time to sort of get a snapshot of who said what. And we sort of do some voting. It's a pretty interesting exercise.
Right, but the great thing is, we can already kind of see some themes.
For sure. Right.
How do we interact with our neighbors? How do we handle some of these things that aren't currently here that are going to be here? Transit, affordable housing.
Right.
So this is always a very useful exercise, to say the least.
No, there we go. No, mine's pretty choppy. But that looks right.
Sorry, my handwriting. It works for me.
You can't combine TOD and mobility options.
No, you're not allowed to combine. We'll combine. We know it's hard to sort of force to pick, but.
First one does say TOD/mass transit.
That is exactly what he said.
So yeah, you can just write down the number as John said. So you can go, 14, 8, 17.
And if you need me to decipher any of them, please let me know, and I'm happy to do so.
It used to be old school in planning. They used to teach you how to print because you used to draft stuff and print stuff, and now everything is all typed and designed. So you assume people know how to print, but we have young kids coming up now. We take them to a meeting and have them print up on the thing, and you can barely read it. So we're like,
So what are you saying, John?
we train our staff on how to print quickly and legibly.
We just hire architects.
That's about it, right? That's
cool.
exactly
Yeah.
right.
Is everyone done?
I'm ready.
Yep, no, we'll go pretty quick. So everybody's got it. So what I'm going to do is, we're just going to go around real quick. What we normally do is sort of show of hands, and we vote, and we put the numbers next to the issue. It's kind of a cool thing to see. What typically happens is, even if you have 50 or 60 or 80 things up there, 5 or 6 get 80% of the votes. And the other stuff falls out pretty quickly. Doesn't mean they're important, but they're not a priority. So just real quick, read off the 3 things you wrote on. I said this number 1, this number 2, this number 3.
Transportation, school, parks.
Transportation, school, and parks. All right, there it is. Transportation, school, and parks. Oh, look at you.
Traffic, parks, and schools.
Oh, this is pretty good.
Define borders.
Okay.
TOD, mass transit, and parks.
Okay.
Schools, infrastructure, and community identity.
Okay.
Oh, I had the smart growth kind of balance, TOD and mass transit, and then I had the residential commercial ratio.
Okay, very good. Very good. So already within just that question, again, everything might be important, but we begin to see some things that are obviously some issues we got to get a handle on and try to figure out. All right, so question number 3. This is the toughest question, and this is the one the audience sort of likes the best because I sort of throw you guys under the bus a little bit when I do it. And this is how I do that. I say, imagine, if you will, town council's had it. They're all moving to Naples, and nobody's running the ship. All right? And starting tomorrow, and I'll point to somebody in the audience and say, well, starting tomorrow, you're in charge. You are calling all the shots, and to make sure the town stays on track, everybody in the town says, you know what, Paul? You pick 3 things we need to start doing right now to make Morrisville a better place, and we got your back. You pick the 3 things, specific, and they have to be specific. So if public safety is a concern, you can't say, we're going to do something about public safety. That's a political answer, but that's not an answer to question number 3. You'd say, we will hire more police officers to patrol the neighborhoods. That's a tangible thing. So the way I phrase it to the public is, and I don't want you to be constrained by fiscal realities. And I don't mean some harebrained answers, but some towns will say, well, I would have said we need a bridge over the river. We've needed a new bridge for 20 years, but every year we try and we get shot down and it's going to cost $27 million. We can't afford it, so I didn't write that down. If it's legitimate, I want to hear it regardless. So you're in charge. You singularly are calling all the shots. You have to identify the 3 things you would do or start doing tomorrow to make Morrisville the place you think it needs to be. What are those 3 specific things?
One for each of the top 3 problems.
Could be, unrelated to anything we've heard so far.
Not even to land use.
Doesn't matter. It's just
projects.
3 things that you think this town should be doing or immediately. The 3 most important things to.
That we're not already doing.
Pardon?
That we're not already doing.
Yeah, I would say that 3 things that we're not already doing that this town should be doing.
Money's no object.
Money's no object, right? And it could be we finally need to redevelop the intersection of blah blah blah, or it could be. For the love of God, we need an economic development commission to start courting business investment. It doesn't matter. 3 things that we need to start doing right away. What are those 3 things? And it can, but it does not have to relate to anything we've talked about so far. It can be something we haven't heard.
So when you say within Morrisville, it is within the power or Can you be more specific there?
I don't say it's within the power because you may have. Let's go like this. There's some streets in town that probably should be widened. And you don't have the money to do it, and maybe it's county or DOT control, right?
Yeah.
So it's not your jurisdiction, but it runs through your town. Say, listen, once and for all, I don't care what the cost is. We have to work with the DOT. We have to widen this from 2 lanes to 4 and put in turn lanes. Okay, we've got that. That's a priority project. So it's not your authority to do it, but you can continue to get out there in front of the transportation funding bill. You can continue to prioritize. You can plan for it. I still need to know that's an important issue.
That's exactly what I was trying to get.
All right, anybody want to guess when we ask 5th graders, almost a university across the country, what are the 3 things they say they would do to make their neighborhood or town a better place? First thing is a pool. If they don't have a pool, they want one. If they have a crummy pool, they want a better one. If they have the best pool in the world, they want even a better one. It doesn't matter. Like, oh my God, that loopy slide we have is okay, but we have one that. Second one is almost always some sort of fast food. I want a Chick-fil-A. I want a Culver's. I want whatever the flavor du jour is of the 10-year-old palate. That's the next thing they want is another one of those. And then the third thing is almost always like trees. We want more trees and more places to play. But those generally are the 3 that 5th graders say when we answer. So we'll see if you guys are in line with what we hear. So real quick, let's 3 things you would do. Let's rattle them off. Go ahead.
I got 2. I said build a transit center. Build a STEM high school near the transit center.
Okay, good.
Purchase land for public use. Purchase land for public use. And purchase land for public use and a public transportation.
Okay. You sound like the mayor of Aurora, Colorado. We're doing their plan. He's just like, let's see, number 1 issue, water. Number 2 issue, water. Number 3, like, okay, I see where this is going.
Okay, I would extend Airport Boulevard with the grade separation all the way to 55.
Okay.
And on that theme, I would widen NC 54 all the way from one end of Morrisville to the other. And then the last one, I was struggling with the last one, and I'll settle on a new public works facility.
Okay, right.
Widen 54 and Davis Drive to end state. Buy land for parks and connect them with greenways. Build a community center in the town center core.
All right, very good.
Identify 50 to 60 acres of land that we can introduce to the school board for a high school and middle school. Rezone if needed. Preserve more open space, conservation districts for public use. And I just want us to focus on one more road widening project, either 54 or McCrimmon Parkway, just to get another project on the books,
right,
like we do for Morrisville Carpenter. So we can do that as a council. That I think McCrimmon would be more doable. I wanted to say 54, but we've already got 54 approved by the state.
Right.
So.
Right. Very good.
Transportation improvements and signalization is where the choke points are, and influence the school board with all the power to get more schooling in and whatever they need, and boost economic development.
Okay, very good. So again, you can see where when we do this with a large audience, the discussion just gets going, and the reason we do that is this: is we always have that grumpy old guy that walks in and says, "You want to know what's wrong with this town? I'll tell you what's wrong with this town. I've lived here 40 years. I've known it my whole life. It's this, and this. It's about time somebody asked me." And then we do the exercise where you rate things and prioritize things. And it's important for us to hear that, but it's probably more important for neighbors to hear what their neighbors say, I think. Because more often than not, the guy comes up and says, "You know what? The young woman sitting next to me, she came up with some ideas I never thought of before. That's a phenomenal idea. We should be doing what she said." This is the grumpy old guy. So when we track what people say for question 1, the 5 things, and then we say prioritize the top 3, about 60% of the time, people's top 3 aren't one of their 5.
Sure.
Which means they heard something in the room that caused them to think a little bit differently. And you want to plant that seed at the beginning of the process. So it's very helpful. The last thing we want to end on is what do you think is best about Morrisville? What are its greatest strengths and assets? Because if you don't identify that and articulate it at the beginning of the process, you run the risk of losing it. If you try to set out to redevelop this and redo your roadways and get new economic development, before you know it, a lot of communities do that and they lose their charm, their sense of place, because they didn't do it well. So if you say, hey, maintain our historic small town charm and keeping that as a priority, appropriately redevelop these areas. But you don't want to let go of that, what is most important. So what is most important? What is most valuable? What are your greatest assets? Because you have to strengthen those going forward and build on them, not run the risk of losing those. So you need to identify on the front end what those are. So as you're writing those, let me just hear a couple. Just throw it out. What do you think?
Are diverse and welcoming citizens.
Very good.
We have a high per capita, high median income community.
Force you to do a lot of stuff.
The biggest strength is our location of where we are, and that's pretty much RTP and the young workforce.
Yeah, your regional location is fantastic.
Did we already say diversity?
Yeah, diverse and welcoming.
Welcoming.
Yeah.
The food.
Food.
I love to eat.
You have a lot of good restaurants.
Blaze Pizza for lunch is pretty good. So
You're right, really good ethnic restaurants.
We have a lot of ethnic restaurants.
good. Before we, we'll get a couple of suggestions before we go, so we can. One of yours. Go ahead.
I said mine.
Yep.
Leveraging resources with other communities.
Right, very good. Greatest
Our
assets.
existing parks and greenways are pretty strong, the ones we do have. We just need more of them.
Right. So we always try to end the workshop on sort of an up, as opposed to focusing on this is bad, we want to change this, and what about that, and we don't have a school site. We want to end it on an upbeat thing. So again, so we did this in a sort of in a very abbreviated fashion, but this is what we do at the beginning, no matter what group is we, and the essence of what we've collected is what are all the issues facing our community? What do you think are the most important ones? What do you think the city should be prepared to do about it? What do you like best about where you live? In essence, these are the nuggets that you need to get a sense of what people are thinking about their community. So in a very concise hour-and-a-half format, you can facilitate in a managed way so one person doesn't occupy the discussion and hijack the meeting, and the person who is hesitant to speak gets the same opportunity to speak in this format as someone who might want to speak for an hour. It works extremely well, and we get great data in a very concise manner. So this in an abbreviated fashion is what we'll do for the business workshop, the community workshop, that next round that Michio talked about next month. So with that, I've run long enough. We'll collect your papers. Can't tell you how excited we are to be doing this project with you. It's so important, and to do it right is so important. And just from the work that we've done already with staff and the Planning and Zoning Committee, our board, and with this group, I think it's going to be a fantastic project. We are thrilled to be working with you. So thank you so much for your time.
So John, I was going to ask, one of the things that you all do when you collect this information, you're looking for pieces that connect one to another, right?
Absolutely.
Because as I was listening, I know that I had sense of community, and I had, we talked about schools, and we talked about people moving out of town and trying to retain our, and that sense of ownership or something. And I know we've shared a few times, and it's not the council's ability to physically build a school, I get that. But, like a high school in a town really does give a town a sense of ownership. And as I was going through, I thought, God, one little thing, not little thing, but one thing like a school can create a sense of community. It would stop people from moving out. It would give a reason for people to go. It would help economic, it's very interesting when you start seeing all the onesie twosies, or it could be traffic, or it could be roadways or whatever, but just one would impact so many other things.
You are exactly right. And I say that at the workshop because at some point, halfway through the audience, someone will say, well, this is really related to whatever. And I wait for that comment to come up before I say, it is impossible to divorce any one of these things from another thing that's mentioned. Because sense of place, attracting the next generation, attracting young families, being attractive to employers or investment, traffic can do that, a school can do that. Any one of these things, when done well, reverberates through all these other things. You cannot divorce them. And that's the nuance of doing a good job of planning, is because it begets all these things. So you're exactly right. You're exactly right. All right?
I'd encourage you to talk to Todd Wright about the strategic planning effort that we just went through. There was a lot of public input into that, similar questions. Right. So you could start there and do a refresh.
Right.
Because the people have lots of opinions.
Right. And that's what we want.
I'd say in addition to that outreach, we have the survey. So the results of that survey and some of the needs identified in that, all that information is being forwarded on them so they can use that as they start preparing existing conditions. So we'll be building off the strategic plan as well as the community survey.
Right. So we'll see you in another few months.
Right. I'll be in town for 5 days in May, so maybe I'll see you in town.
Councilmember Johnson?
So I was going to ask, when is that first public input session then? Have we scheduled that yet? I assume that's May.
Yes,
Since
May.
you're going to be back for 5 days.
May 17th.
17th.
We'll be doing
several days right before Springfest. So we'll be picking Springfest as our last day. So starting Wednesday afternoon, moving to Thursday and Friday, and then on into Springfest. So that's
community workshop, business workshop, focus group discussions, interviews, culminating in Springfest. It's a whole
during that whole time frame.
You bet.
Okay.
You bet.
Which will be on the 19th, so please stop by if you see our tent.
Workshop in a box will be after that?
No, the DIY kits, we'll have those available probably starting in about a week or so. And
right.
Anybody can pick them up whenever they want.
Okay, do any other council members have comments or questions at this time?
And that May 17th event, where will it be?
That'll be here. We're going to do a traditional public input workshop then.
Okay.
And we're going to send out a postcard for that as well.
Okay.
Councilmember Singh?
Oh, sorry. This is over a year-long process, correct?
Yes.
18
Okay.
to 24 months.
2 years.
That's what I thought. So, this area is considered one that I think narrowed down to top 10 for Amazon headquarters. Does that blow up everything if that happens?
Boy, that blows up everything no matter where that happens. We're working in a few other
That's what I
states that are
mean.
contenders as well. And this goes back to a conversation that was had a little bit earlier is we can't put a hold on development or developer interest or investment during the course of a process, so we have to recalibrate when something pops up. Only if you're doing a small area study can you put a moratorium on development. We don't propose ever doing that on a comprehensive or land use plan for a city or a town. If that happens, we'll deal with it on the fly. But you bring in 20,000 plus employees, whatever, that's a game changer. So you recalibrate whatever on the fly. But there are areas where that could go. There are areas where that can't. So you sort of know going in.
The border areas with Morrisville is what they're looking at.
Exactly right.
They're looking at 6 sites around here, but that one's wide open for them.
Exactly right. And we've done Motorola's world headquarter redo. We're doing McDonald's in Oak Brook. When they left to go down to the city, we're doing all the McDonald's property redevelopment scenarios. So we did Oshkosh Corporation. Oshkosh just landed Oshkosh Corporation for the city of Oshkosh, some work that we did. So we're real familiar with that. And sometimes those come in halfway through or at the tail end of a planning project. It's real common. So, but the scale of that's an aberration on the normal scale curve of economic development. Sure. And you deal with it when it hits. Or when it's going to hit, yeah. But we're nimble enough to
deal with it.
If it's as a viable contender, we'll be your hired gun to do what we can to land that when it comes into play. So, that'd be exciting, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Excuse me, it's 9 o'clock. We're going to move on to the next item on our agenda. 2C, Appointed Public Bodies Administrative Policy Review. Aaron Hudson, the town clerk, will lead us through this effort.
We'll share. All right. I am going to try to keep us on track and move through this relatively easily. Most of this is really just a recapture of conversation that took place at the February 27th roundtable discussion. A lot of input and feedback from council, also including a lot of input and feedback from staff, kind of what we had heard just with overview with our citizen advisory boards and committees. Different things we've been thinking about, seeing, hearing over some period of time, things that we think we could improve upon, include things of that nature. So I provided a lot of attachments, probably more than you really needed. So there are 4 things that I'm really going to focus on. The first one is going to be the proposed policy amendments. And really just tried to kind of chart that out in a somewhat easy to read fashion to be able to go through that with council. And a couple of areas in the proposed amendments to focus on to get additional council input, some consensus, your feedback on proposed edits to the policy. So I'm just going to go just through these kind of as they appear. So the first is recruitment. Based upon discussion, based upon a number of successful previous recruitments that we've seen, there was some consensus, I think we heard, for some rolling recruitment rather than these kind of big blitz recruitments, because what that's giving us is a number of applications for a very few openings. And then per our policy, we hold those on file for a year. We always reach back out to those individuals to determine if they're still interested, if they still want to be considered, particularly for openings. So it leaves us with just this kind of bank of applications that just kind of sits and holds. So there's not, I don't want to say there's not a need, but there's not a big need for a push for recruitment like we used to see. So just wanted to see if council is still comfortable with the rolling recruitment.
Well, and you also have empty seats then on a committee. If
Absolutely.
That may be for months until we get to that next time frame. So yeah, rolling I think that's fine.
So you're saying rolling appointment opportunity?
Correct.
Okay.
I'm rolling.
I'm rolling.
Yep.
Okay. And we can discuss if that needs to be quarterly, bi-monthly, just really depending on kind of the feedback and the input that we see.
Depends on which committee, right? So that's important too. If it is a planning and zoning, you have a sudden drop, then you have to come back quickly, and you can't wait for your biannual, semi-annual thing. It all depends on what kind of committee you're losing people.
Yeah, I'd offer if you support that, Aaron and I can work together to figure out the framework to make that happen easily for you.
So exactly, so that's the reason I put it broadly rolling. So depends on the committee.
So one thing I also wanted to mention with this particular item, and I'll bring it up a little bit later, is we talked about potentially offering a matrix for council to review applications. That's also just because, I think there were 50 or 60 plus applications with the last recruitment cycle. It's a lot for you all to review and kind of see and wait and determine really who's maybe best suited. So one of the things that we proposed and shared with you with this packet is a matrix that staff would do some of that preliminary vetting, so to speak, on the front end. Some of the proposed questions that we'll go over with the updated application. Essentially, we're going to pull that information. We're going to give it to you all in just kind of an easy-to-view document so that you can see if there's 20 applicants, the first 14 have shared, the required information and maybe have some additional qualifications or skills. That doesn't mean that the others haven't met the minimum qualification. It just means that maybe those others have risen to the top of the pool. So it just makes that decision-making process, I think, a little bit easier for you.
Okay, so no one would drop out completely. They'd still be listed. So that's important to note. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So you do pre-vetting, which I think is nice because then it isn't necessarily who somebody knows. We'll be able to see who is really qualified.
And it's
make it a bit more
work that all 7 of us are doing in the background anyway, so they can save us some time by doing that for us.
And I don't want to speak out of turn, not saying that staff is making recommendations or decisions in any way, shape, or form, but again, just helping kind of clarify some of that information so you're not flipping back and forth through 80 or 90 pages worth of applications trying to say, okay, did applicant A have this? Did applicant C have this? We're just going to kind of chart it out for you and just hopefully make that process a little bit easier.
That would be helpful.
So, okay. So I am going to move on to some term information. So something else that we had discussed previously was potential term limits or allowing members only to serve on one board rather than 2, because we have a lot of really long-serving, long-tenured members, and not that we don't appreciate their service, because we certainly do. They serve a critical role here in the town. But again, to allow some of those folks to offer up some additional vacancy or some additional opportunity for other people to serve, just really wanted to kind of understand council's comfort level either with term limits or with allowing members to only serve on one committee rather than two, which is what the policy currently states.
And are you looking for a consensus decision tonight on this issue?
If council is comfortable giving that, we would certainly appreciate that.
Okay. Would anyone like to start? There's two different things. Only one committee at a time, and the other thing is term limits.
I like the one committee because we have a lot of folks that want to be involved, and it will allow more people to be involved. We'll get a wider experience set, and I also would be in favor of term limits, whatever that may be, just to be able to keep getting some fresh ideas, as long as it's not everybody at the exact same time and you get a whole brand new group of folks, but as long as there was some level of staggering, and so we'd have some consistency across, but I like the idea myself.
Okay, we're looking to hear from everybody, please.
So I too think at this point we have so many people that are interested that we should maybe look at folks serving on one board at one time. I think I would be comfortable with moving forward with that now. I don't like the idea of doing term limits, and I would like to see if having folks serve on one committee at one time, how that kind of plays out and how that affects allowing folks to serve. But I'm not in favor of doing the term limits.
So just to try to help facilitate, so we've heard two opinions. One of the other things I might offer is whether you establish term limits or not formally in your policy, that remains in your power by who you vote for.
Today.
Yes.
True.
So it's just a different perspective of always voting for an incumbent member, but you control that anyways, just not by formal policy. If you're not comfortable at this point with establishing those term limits. You did establish term limits for your chair and vice chair last time we did this.
But they could still remain members of that board. They just couldn't serve in that capacity.
That is technically correct, yes. I don't think we actually talked about that, but you're actually right.
And thank you for adding that, Martha. I appreciate that. At any time, this council has, we have the ability to appoint or not reappoint somebody. And I would prefer to leave it that way today.
Councilmember Garamella, did you want to add your thoughts?
One council, one person, one committee, I'm fine, because I think we started this for the reason that not many people at the time were available, and I think time has come when to give more people more chance is all good. And how many people are we looking at? Do we have data of how many people are continuously reoccurring, and how many people does it affect when we remove or basically tell them a rule like, they're in two committees that you have to pick one of the two?
So I think what would happen, what I would envision if council wanted to only allow current members to continue serving on one board once whichever appointment, if they're appointed to two currently, whichever appointment expired first, they just would be ineligible to.
I get that. How many people are there right now?
So
I don't have that.
We can compile that very easily and get that for you, but you have people on committees that have served 10, 12 years.
Those are two data points that I'm asking for. One is data point number one is at this point of time, how many people are there in two committees? That is number one. And number two is how many people are there like several years, those two.
That's easy to pull for you to review.
So length of service?
Yes. So that it's transparent to everyone. Everyone can see that.
Okay. Again, a swag, you probably have 4 or 5 that are serving on multiple committees. Yeah, that's my guess.
So that's what I'm.
Yeah,
okay,
but we'll pull that.
So what?
at this moment in time is what I was referring to.
Councilmember Garamella, did you want to give thoughts about term limits and your thoughts towards those?
Term limits is which areas are, because I want to look at the data of how many are they really, how many people are really continuing.
What is the number? I'm trying to understand what, if there were 5 or there were 30, what would that number, how would that play into whether or not we would have term limits?
Because what we're trying to prove is, not a problem. It's like these were the people who have, at times when we didn't have any committees, they have helped over years and years and years. It's not like now we have it. Okay, thank you for your service. We have someone else. So I'm trying to see who they are and what it is. Because are we, like Erin said, which one? How will we turn around by saying, okay, we make a rule, 2 people cannot serve on one committee. How will you roll that thing out? And how smoothly will that work?
Well, I mean, staff would do that as...
Yeah, so by just telling them, okay, you can't serve it, will they roll off, will they make addition on which one they will do it?
So if I think I'm understanding you correctly, no one's going to be kicked off of any committee, effective July 1. That's not what we're saying.
Okay.
So if you're serving on 2 committees right now, one of those terms expires in December and then one expires in August. Your August term expiration, you would just not be eligible to apply for reappointment to that committee. You would still be serving on your committee that you serve on until December. And essentially, if you apply for reappointment to both, council could not reappoint you to both.
So what if
only one?
So what if they had the choice? They said, you know what? Even though my thing expires, I want to resign on this and continue on the others.
That can happen.
And that can happen.
So that's the reason, it's a choice that we have to leave it.
And we can draft the guidelines and policies to help through those.
That's the reason I was asking, how do you do that? Not trying to get into the weeds, but a committee is when it's citizen engagement, they get into it.
Okay. Oh, okay. I mean, Steve, if you want to go first.
Please.
Mine was simple. I put it in I'm for both things, term limits and only one committee.
I'm for only one committee, and I believe and always have believed in term limits. I think that we have many great people that serve in our committees, and many of them have done that for many years because there was a lack of interested applicants. But I think there's such a pipeline of engaged citizens in Morrisville that I think having term limits would encourage those who are serving on our committees for a long time to move to other committees and give another chance so there's a continued flow of talent coming through. Recently, I've been attending some of our meetings just sitting in the back, and I've been thoroughly impressed with just how excellent these citizens are in what they do. So I stand by term limits, and I think it's perfectly fine.
Okay. I believe that serving on one committee, since we have so much interest, should be enough for any of our citizens. So I'm in favor of one committee, and I feel that we can always choose to not reappoint. So I'm not in favor of sort of limiting our options by having term limits, is sort of how I look at that. It's always within our control to not reappoint, so I wouldn't want to formalize a policy which would make it impossible for us to keep someone who's serving very well, for example.
Yeah, but they would be able to serve on one of the other committees, right? I mean, they could literally, for 20 years, be on 5 different committees potentially.
I think that's true.
Yeah.
But
eliminate you from another committee.
But based on what I've heard here, 4 of you support term limits, 2 suggest not. It takes 4 to put somebody on a board. So again, you're going to be able to implement your own term limits depending on how you see that, whether you put it in your policy or not at this point. We'll get the data for you as well to just help you solidify your decision by the next time we talk about this.
I think it's always harder, though, to even though we have the power to vote out, not vote out, but once someone has served and they come back and applying, the reality of it is, I think it would be not as easy to not vote for that incumbent. I think if it was a policy, that it would be easier for us to say they've done their, whatever it is, 2 terms, and now they rotate out and we stagger it. And I think that would encourage other people to step forward. I think many people have not in the past been able to get onto some of our committees because certain people have been on there, and they've done an excellent job. I mean, don't get me wrong, but they've been on there 12 years or 8 years, 10 years, so there's no way for they can get on. And
well, it takes the political bias out of it, I think. I think there's,
Right.
After a certain number of years, it can become very political, and then it puts folks that are voting into a kind of a weird quandary, whereas by setting, I mean, we already have term limits for the chair and vice chair. There would be no reason why, in my opinion, we wouldn't have term limits on the others, except that it would, in a good way, I think it would remove the good old boy or good old whatever you call it element out of it. People that have just been around for a long time, maybe support campaigns, whatever it may be. It just opens it up to potential little bit of political stuff from my perspective. That's just how I see it.
Yeah, I think everything's going to be a little political, and that's why we have to make those kind of decisions. So, but we're doing it right now, so that's fine.
I would interject, though, somebody could, if we had term limits, still come back in 2 years or the next opening. They're just sitting out for a term, so they can come back.
Or any other board.
Yes.
I also just wanted to clarify, so the term limits are for the seat that they're holding for chair and vice chair, not for the board. And that's really to just help with succession planning, kind of, for those roles.
And build more leadership within our citizenry.
So I would just, are you, now the one under the current policy you have does not apply to BOA and the PZB.
Correct.
Is that going to move to the right side too? Yeah, I have a real concern with that because I think if we're going to do term limits, I think we may put ourselves at a disadvantage for some of the folks that are serving on the BOA and the Planning and Zoning Board that have the experience and the knowledge that is incredibly helpful. And if we thought that somebody was not performing well or wasn't doing their service on either one of those, we would not vote for them. I quite frankly have done that over the years. I have voted not to reappoint folks. So I have no problem doing that. But I also acknowledge that the experience and the knowledge of certain folks is kind of important on those particular committees especially.
So this section of the policy does not apply to BOA and PZB. Their terms are outlined specifically under the UDO.
Okay.
Not their term limits, though.
If I recall correctly, they do not have term limits.
I don't know. I feel that there's a danger in allowing anybody to sit on something for an entire life. I mean, these aren't Supreme Court appointments, and I think we have enough growth within our community, and there's enough intellect and experience in a variety of areas that it would be sad in our entire town if we think there's only a handful of people that could carry us forward. And I don't mean you're saying
that's not the reality of what is happening on those committees. So that's why I'm pointing that out.
No, I know, but maybe what we do is, and what we require them is to do a little bit more succession planning within and do some training from within so that we're not beholden to 1 or 2 people to carry the day for us. I mean, then it becomes their own little fiefdom. And I don't quite understand the need in our community why we would ever feel so needed to have people on a committee for a decade or two. I don't understand that, the concept, just because we have so much talent within the community. And I think over 4 years, if you can't transition knowledge to keep it going smoothly, plus not only that, we have staff who work with them. And I don't know, it gives for me, it gives more people an opportunity to take on a significant role. I totally understand what you're saying.
Yeah, so to be clear, most of the folks on these committees are new, so that's not my concern. And again, if there was ever somebody who was creating a fiefdom, I would be the first one to take them off of any committee. So that's not the reality. So if I would hope that, so here's how I've always looked at it. It is council's responsibility to make sure they appoint the correct people to these boards and committees, and to make sure that the boards and committees are functioning correctly with those people. And if that is not happening, then it's council's responsibility to change that. And that comes during appointment time and appointment process. And I think that that's something that needs to remain in our.
Yeah. So what would help me understand what is the danger in having a 4-year term limit? Like, what's your fear in setting that? I mean, if we can appoint or not appoint, what would be the concern of having a term limit?
Well, like I said, the experience and the knowledge of folks. Sometimes you want that experience and the knowledge, and somebody's performing exemplary. Why shouldn't they be allowed to continue, especially if there's additional turnover on that committee or that board? That consistency is very helpful.
Institutional wisdom.
And institutional wisdom.
Well, but that, like in any other business, I mean, being on a community board is not unlike any other corporate organization where you have institutional wisdom, but you have people that are turning over and you're transferring that knowledge through succession planning. And if there were not qualified, and I don't know, as a possibility, if there were no qualified candidates, could council, extend or something, but
that's what just to markedly say there's no term limits. It's opening up. I think it's opening up the possibility of
a couple of people similar to what we did this last time around, saying, hey, vote for my guy, vote for my guy, vote for my guy. And it becomes a political thing rather than who is, necessarily best qualified. Because that actually did happen this last time. I mean, let's call a spade a spade.
Vote for my guy.
A number of people did.
I mean, I won't go into detail, but a number of people asked me to vote for certain people. I mean, I'm going to be transparent here. So,
I have no idea what you're talking about. So
okay.
We need to
that never happens on council. Okay.
I have never asked you or anybody vote for my guy, vote for my guy. So I don't know what you're talking about.
I'm going to suggest that let us get you the data and let's move on from this one because you're stuck in this one now, and then you can talk about it more.
And Erin, I have one question that you asked that I did not know. Is you said something that the UDO is tied to the PCB and BOA?
So the UDO provides administrative guidance for BOA and PZB.
Okay.
There are very specific sections that outline them as boards.
Okay, and from what I'm hearing, the whole conversation is about the limits and all those things, and from what we have voted. Can you tell me, I can't recollect, is it 3 years or 4 years for?
BOA and PZB are 3-year terms. Our regular or our standard boards.
2 years, right?
Boards and committees are 2 years.
2 years. So I'm trying to see both sides of the flip of the coin here. Is it something that we are doing this UDO here? Is it something that we can lower it to 2 years? So that, or is it something fixed that comes with UDO? I do not know the answer to that.
UDO is your document. You changed the UDO. Now there's a lengthy public comment and amendment process to do that. It's much different.
You're going through that, right? So is it something?
No. You're going through a land use plan.
Okay, not to the UDO.
Correct.
Okay, I just wanted to be sure. Okay, that's perfect.
That will recommend us changing the UDO potentially.
Yeah, but appointments isn't going to be covered by your land use plan discussion.
So okay, so that the whole reason was the timing of not wait for every 3 years if we had to make a call. That was going behind. Okay, no problem.
Okay. All right. So we will bring you information and allow you to continue to discuss.
No problem.
All right, so the next topic I want to cover a little bit is conduct. We were asked to look at conduct a little more specifically. We had kind of just a very generic couple of sentence statement that we incorporated the last time. So we were asked to make that a little more specific, and we tried to assign some specific roles, tasks to individuals here at the town to take some of the ownership off of the support staff that goes to these meetings and attends these meetings, really helping the board chairs and those committee members, for lack of a better term, kind of police themselves and be able to utilize myself, Martha, senior staff as a resource whenever there are conduct issues. So we've really just kind of outlined some additional things for them. We've given them some examples of offending behavior, what they should do if they see these types of behavior, who they should report them to if they cannot resolve them themselves, what can happen if the types of behavior occur. Essentially, because this was already a part of your policy, if gross misconduct occurs, it could lead up to someone being removed from a committee, which council has always had that authority to do. So this just really kind of further defines and specifies that. So just kind of want to give everybody an opportunity to give a head nod, a yay or nay, or what have you to this part.
I'd be fine with it. I'd just recommend you look at other, maybe what other towns do.
We did.
Okay, and that's how you came up with these. Okay.
I won't take full credit for all of this.
I would maybe add at the very bottom one on the far right, say for any particular in perpetuity or for a set number of years. Just clarify that they can say they can't serve for another 2 years or serve forever, or just make it so that we can have it in there that if removed for conduct unbecoming, they may be prohibited forever or for a small number of years.
Maybe not allowed to serve for a term?
Or at the council's discretion for any period of time.
Okay.
So,
you're trying to put more clarity to that.
Yeah, a little more clarity to that. Say that we can't only tell them they can't do it forever, just say a few years. Or we could leave it alone. That's just
I'd say leave it alone because the council will be aware of it. They're the one taking the person off. And if they reapply, they'd be like, okay, you really, I mean, if they wanted to put them back on, put that person
they
back
could,
on, they could.
right.
But I don't think they would.
And that's, I didn't see other people, or I guess other jurisdictions specifying a time unless they said forever and ever, amen.
Okay, we're not.
So that's why I didn't include a timeline.
Okay.
Not sure you can even do that.
Okay. So, thoughts?
Is there an appeal process or an arbitration other than what I'm seeing if unresolved? I'm just throwing, just as a process here. Number two, if unresolved, the board or committee chair will refer to the town clerk manager and will consult the council at her discretion. And then the flow is going, but is there a process of an appeal or some kind of a way? It's pretty much, how does that work? Because
council is the final arbiter of anybody on a committee. So the challenge that we've had in the instances that I'm aware of was how to, I'll say, appropriately and effectively get you the information that staff or committees were having these challenges. That in and of itself has been awkward, not only for you, but for us as staff, because they are volunteers. But chairs have not felt comfortable with dealing with it, nor have staff, which are often administrative staff support, not department heads. So we're trying to just put some structure to get that information to you. How you choose to deal with that is yours. But this isn't a legal process. There's not appeal and arbitration. You want them to serve and represent the town, or you don't.
I get it.
Okay.
I get it. So it's just based on the recommendation of the chair and the committee, board committee chair, this whole process is triggering, right? That's where I'm seeing that.
I don't know that I'd say recommendation. We're trying to make sure council is aware when these situations occur and trying to give people not only the responsibility but the authority to bring that forward rather than feeling like they or their committee have to suffer in silence.
And are we, I recollect when I joined the committee, Stormwater, we were given a document to sign, right? So they are signing with all the...
Yeah, this is an expansion of what was probably a pretty generic, not a lot of teeth document.
So
yes.
You're incorporating these things into that document?
Yeah, Erin hasn't gotten to it yet, but she's developing a whole orientation, a training, a regular update, tools and materials to help everybody with this process, which she's been in development, but is nearing sort of a complete package.
Yeah, so that's what I want to make sure that every person new and current is familiar with this process so that they're onboarded and not something
that's correct.
Ad hoc. So that's the reason I was asking the sign and consent into.
And we do have those consent forms.
Yeah, because I do remember I signed when I was there.
So I have one comment on this one specifically is that it addresses the committee chair as the person to whom someone should go to. It doesn't address when it's the committee chair that is the offending party. And then secondarily to that, with regard to the things that we spoke of before, and I think it will lend itself to the pre-vetting that staff does. I'm not interested in popularity contests, or I'm not interested in friendships. I'm not interested in who knows whom. I'm more interested in the talent. And I hope that what you come up with, for me at least, when I'm looking at people who are wanting to be on a committee, is by vetting them by talent. I don't necessarily, need to know who they are or to give a favor to somebody. I would like that to help me decide, because I want talent. But I think we need to address, just based on recent history, so we don't run into a scenario that could backfire, is to address every member that's on any committee, from the chair down to the newest member that was assigned most recently. And I don't know if...
Are you asking for tenure?
No. But what happens when I'm the chair of a committee and I'm the one that is causing all kinds of yuck and everybody is unhappy with me?
That's part of the issue is a lot of the time we don't find out until it's way far down the road. So
we say here, any member of the board or committee should report it to the committee chair. And then if unresolved, the board or committee chair will refer to, well, how do we identify it? So what if it is the chair that's actually the offending party?
And that's my oversight. I do have that as an amendment in the policy, because I did think about that, but thank you for pointing that out.
Thank you.
So how, just for everybody, how would that happen if the chair was the offending party?
So what I've indicated in the policy is if the chair or the vice chair is committing the offending conduct, any member of the board or committee can then just kind of enact this process and bring it to myself, bring it to Martha, and go ahead and identify it so that steps can kind of get started.
And then you would take it with them so they wouldn't feel like they had to necessarily chastise or manage the chair. Right. Okay, so you would take, and that could be done in a anonymous way as well. Or does someone have to come forward and say, I'm Jerry, and I say, Steve Rao is X, Y, and Z?
Yeah, I'd say in the three circumstances, and again, I think we are pretty fortunate that it's not a problem that we have all the time, but when it's a problem, it's a problem. We've worked very hard to not embarrass or ridicule that person. So we've tried to handle it very sensitively without a real process to do that. And at least from a staff perspective, recognizing it's not staff's role to arbitrate the behavior of people that you've appointed and say you shouldn't be on there or you should, but also making you aware of you might need to know this as you make these decisions. So we've grappled with that and we're trying to formalize it based on what we've learned and what we've heard back from you about those processes when they've occurred.
And then the last question I have is within the training, so all committee members will be trained, and this doesn't necessarily identify, and I understand this is just a document for us, but it doesn't identify what the offenses are. So like what could remove me from a committee, and then would there be examples? Like you'll give examples so people know what.
And it's in the amended policy that's attached to, so I can go back to that later.
Okay, no, as long as it's there, that's all.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other input on this particular item? Okay. One more quick item to cover here. So just wanted to go over attendance a little bit. Excuse me. So I know we had talked a little bit about, you all had talked a little bit about adjusting possibly the attendance rules for board and committee members. So currently, if a board meets 11 or more times a year, so that's everybody but BOA, everybody but BOA, I think one more. I'm sorry?
Planning and zoning.
No, they meet.
No, they meet regularly. So it doesn't.
Typically, MES typically is taken off in the summer, I think. So
I think PMAC as well. So it discounts just a couple of boards, but otherwise they were allowed to miss 4 of up to 11 meetings, which is a good chunk. So did a little bit of research comparing with some other jurisdictions, used some of the information that Councilmember Johnson had provided, used some of my resources at the School of Government, and kind of a standard across the board is requesting or requiring 75% attendance. So that would make it allowing them 3 absences instead of 4. So just wanted to get a feel for council's comfort level there.
In a calendar year?
Yes, within a calendar year. For their scheduled meetings within a calendar year.
Sure, that's fine. But then you go back to the policy we just discussed, is that automatic or does it come to the council and they decide,
Grant an exception.
Is it automatic? Do they understand just as long as you guys work it out? That's what I'm trying to say.
we've actually addressed that, that there are advisory committee members that we've had that have been out of the country for 3 months and missed 3 meetings. I mean, that has happened. And the current process, since we adopted these standards, and this was a significant issue for us. I mean, we had people on rosters that never attended meetings. It was a significant problem, and we were not monitoring or doing anything about it. So when we really sort of started enforcing the policies, when somebody reaches 2, they're getting a courtesy letter. Is it 2?
Yes.
And then when they've reached 3,
they get kind of a warning letter,
yes,
like, hey, you're quickly approaching your maximum.
And at 4,
number of absences.
we're saying you're no longer on the committee.
So currently they're allowed 4. So once they hit 4, they get that notice that says, this is the final absence that you're allowed. Should
Okay.
you incur one more, you'll no longer be allowed to
So
serve.
what are the exceptions? Like
We haven't had any exceptions. Now that's very easy. That should come to you.
Yeah.
That should, if you want an out policy or if somebody's sick, and again, it's a PZB example, so don't pay attention to it from a PZB standpoint. But Esther resigned from PZB because her husband was ill and she wanted to take care of her husband. Those things happen. Doesn't really matter that it was PZB, but that could happen on any committee. There just needs to be a decision by you. And maybe that's in consultation with the chair. Do they participate? Are they active? I don't know. But there's nothing in there now for an exception.
The reason I bring this up is a person, got deputed for deployment. Just throwing an idea. So you can't just say you're out for 2 and you're out. So those are exceptions. who's employed overseas, not at the time of appointment, but got appointment later. So how would you basically take everything, or a person who is just sitting at home and not coming for a meeting, So is that how?
This will address that.
So how would you take those kind of things? They're regular offenders, you can understand, but who are telling you, okay, they're gone for an extended period of time, versus who is in a maternity leave or something like that. So those kind of things.
To Martha's point, if there are exceptions, but right now we don't have those identified in the policy. They weren't when I stepped into this role. We've just not added them in. If that's something you want to include, we're happy to draft something of that sort.
Just put a line at the discretion of the town manager. They can discuss it. It doesn't have to come.
I disagree with that. I don't have advisory appointment authority, so I shouldn't have advisory appointment dismissal power either.
No, dismissal, no, especially if it's something they want to talk about, these kind of...
Yeah, I think Aaron and I recognized as we've done this that there does need to be this intermediary liaison, and I think that we've recognized that's our roles for the committees and for you. And so that's how some of these drafts have been designed. You need and want us to do that middle work for you, but you have to make the final decision. So I think we've...
Absolutely, that's all I'm trying to do.
And the most is once a month? Are there some that meet more than one time a month?
Not at this point.
Yeah, not meet, but some committees have...
12, that's...
Some committees have activities that they also kind of get credit for. Parks and Rec does a clean up the community day. I think, public safety sometimes participates in things. So, but meeting no more than one a month.
Stream cleanup but that's not counted. That's separate from.
Yeah, that's not meeting attendance.
That's right. That's right.
Would the council be interested in sort of having some language saying, and the chair can put forth a request for exception if someone gets 4 absences, they can say, can they have a pass for one of them or something? Do we want to give the chair that authority
to recommend a pass?
To recommend a pass instead of just an automatic removal from the board, sort of let them sort of almost self-police for one extra?
No, I think that's
it
is. Yeah, that should be us. Yes.
Okay, so
if you have a policy, you need to follow it, whatever the policy says. So why?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, maybe we can.
Wants to request an exception. They should request the exception. It should come to you. You probably do want to talk to the chair of the committee to determine how active they're involved to make your decision.
Mm-hmm. So there'd be language so the offending party can request an exception from us.
Directly to council?
I think we need something that sounds like for extenuating circumstances instead of just hey, I decided to stay an extra day at Disney.
Although if anybody's on maternity leave for 4 months, I want to know that. I'm teasing.
Okay, are we comfortable with that?
Yes.
Sort of giving them the opportunity to ask us for an exception.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I mean, it'll just come down to, the only thing I would say is us making sure that we're equally fair to everybody with those particular exceptions. I guess in time you would build up what those...
I will offer, since we've really been sharing and telling people what the policies are and enforcing it, this has not been a significant issue. It has corrected itself just based on the things that we've done already.
I would just hate to get into, well, you excused them for this. How is that excuse more than mine? I mean, I just hate to get into that kind of how will we judge what is and what isn't.
We'll draft something for you to look at and respond to.
So just to keep us on track, because I know we are running a little bit long on this. No, I'm sorry. Are you comfortable with bumping back that number of absences to 3 rather than 4? Because I know that is a change.
I'm fine with that.
That is okay?
the 50%.
And that was going to be my next question. So that is a little bit of an issue for any number of reasons. People may have to come late because they're running late from work. They may have to leave early because they've got another meeting, or they may have an event, or they may need to pick a child up from something. But that doesn't discount the individuals who are there for the full length of the meeting, who are getting the same amount of credit as someone who's not attending the full meeting. So that was kind of the premise behind that proposed addition. So I do want to get some quick feedback on that.
So would that be like if you came in more than 15 minutes late, would you have you wouldn't get credit if it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes? At what point in time is it?
So that would really be whatever council is comfortable with. If you're comfortable with someone being 15 minutes late and getting credit for staying, and it's a 30-minute meeting or a 45-minute meeting, they've still missed a portion of that discussion. I don't want to arbitrarily make any rules.
The two kinds of things when I have attended committee meetings. One is the first part of it, and the second is depending on a meeting starts at 6:30, and they commit to 7:30, and if it runs over, people say, I gotta go, and they leave. The meeting will be running, and with all due respect, it is both sides of the thing, because their commitment was 7:30, and even though the meeting goes, they gotta leave. So it all depends on how the agenda is, and if their commitment is 1 hour meeting or 2 hour meeting, right? So in all fairness, the agenda which is given, are they allowed to, what is the set criteria for them to attend 1 hour meeting? Is the thing, PZB could run several hours,
You need to be there. If you want to be on a planning and zoning board, you need to be there for a meeting.
I would tell you PZB and BOA are different in this one.
So it's
to attend the whole meeting. There are alternates. There's all kinds of other reasons, because it is important for those members to be at the full meeting.
There are like legal issues that play with both of those committees.
How would you quantify when you're generalizing these kind of
what's
things?
The tardy?
I think with those, you don't have too much.
But it's important. Too many people leave just for attendance sake. Come and 20 minutes late.
Well, and like I said, I would not arbitrarily make any decision. This would have to be council's decision, because currently the policy states that if someone attends 50% of a meeting, they are counted as present. So that means if there's an hour meeting and they're there for half an hour, they get the same amount of attendance credit as someone who's there for the full hour.
What do their towns do? Do they have something like this?
I'll have to double check. I did not recall seeing partial attendance specifically spelled out, but I'm happy to go back in touch.
This was before you got here?
This was in place prior to me being here.
I think it needs work too. I would agree. I'm not sure what the answer is, but I will tell you, if somebody is consistently late for a meeting or consistently leaving a meeting early, I think council should know. That should be part of our decision making when we reappoint and appoint folks. So
yeah, I would support a gavel to gavel is the only way to get credit for a meeting, and then if they have some exception, they can bring it to us. Instead of pointing on the other one. Those two kind of go hand in hand.
So do our committee, so this is a question. I know how BOA and PZB work. They do the work until the work is done. But our other committees, do they consistently end at a specific time? Do they start at 6 and then they end at 7? Or I was not given that impression.
That's not the impression I have either.
Okay.
It is my impression. I think that
Okay.
the other, and again, maybe what we want to do is go back and verify our assumptions. I mean, I regularly attend a number of meetings. Most do not run over, or at least they're trying not to. I think that the general issue is people leave late, or people just check out a little bit early.
attend late. Or,
Yes.
Yeah.
Often I think it probably is somebody's gone home, they've gotten caught in traffic, they're making that effort to get there and miss the mark. I think that's different, and Councilmember Garamel is right. If you're only expecting to be there till 7:30 and it's now 8 o'clock, hey, sometimes you got to go. We can work on that portion a little bit more as well.
I think I would like to understand that better too.
So
yeah, but I'm not aware that any of the committees routinely and regularly run over the allotted time they have for their meeting. You may know more than I do.
So I know sometimes the MESC committee, I think they all aim to stay at right about an hour, maybe a little bit longer, but it's also my understanding that if they have more items on the agenda that take longer than an hour, they're going to work through an agenda.
Well, sure. And so I'll give you an example is public safety. I mean, the public has an opportunity, and I know they're coming forward now. I know a couple of members from the community are going forward with applications to public safety. And so, yeah, so those issues then require the attention of the members that are serving, and you can't just check out.
Well, and one of the things,
and we're expecting.
And I think we are trying to challenge our advisory committees, I'll say with more work, but I think you know what I mean. You're looking for their stuff more. So one of the things we may have to add is structuring your agenda, timekeeping, staying on, deferring, maybe that's a way we can help with that.
Okay, and just to be really clear, I use the Public Safety Committee as an example there. I'm not aware of anybody who's coming late or leaving early from public safety. I am aware where it was happening on the Planning and Zoning Board, and I had great concern about that, great concern.
So why don't we hold that particular item until we can get you guys some additional information, just so we don't make that decision in a vacuum, until everybody's a little more comfortable with that.
Well, this is all our initiated changes. So this can run, there's no time frame where this has to be adopted. This can run on our own schedule.
True. If we want to start some important stuff, though, like rolling appointments, and if you want to update your application, I don't want to be talking about this in 6 months.
No, and I'm not. You wrote in here you wanted us to vote on this in a week. And I'm hearing you're bringing us all kind of information that I'm not sure we're going to have and be able to digest in a week.
So for the items that, hold on, do you have any more items?
I just wanted to show them a couple of things, but go ahead.
Okay. The ones that you agree on, we can amend your policy. We'll bring back more work, and you can amend it again. It's not a static document.
That's right.
We want to be able. I think we'd really like some of those things in place as we're heading into a new year. So if you amend those that you're in agreement on, we can start getting some of that information out there to be used.
I wasn't advocating for 6 months. I was advocating for 2 weeks. So don't get panicky. But that's fine. I agree.
Weeks is budget presentation.
Okay, fine. 4 weeks.
A week. Budget presentation.
We'll bring it in a week, and if you're okay. And if not, we can hold.
You got 4 minutes.
I'm going to do my best. So several folks made comments about questions to include or remove from our application. So what we did is we used a lot of other jurisdictions' information. Again, I pulled on my School of Government resources, trying to just make sure that we were a little more inclusive using some of the supplemental questions from our last PZB search, really just to make it a little more all-encompassing, I think, for what we were looking for. Mm-hmm. So it's a little bit difficult to see, but anything in green is a proposed addition. Anything in red is what we're going to remove, but that doesn't mean that we're just taking it out altogether. It's likely just being replaced with something more specific. So I know there were some comments made about age, date of birth, things like that. So we never did ask anyone's particular date of birth on our previous application. We wanted to just get a little clearer information about some demographics, because what we've included on the second page or the end of our disclaimer is that we're really seeking a diverse cross-representation of members from our community. So that's why we included a little bit of that information.
In fact, if you prefer not to say as an option,
right,
sort of gives us some nice.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Included a lot of the supplemental questions that had been discussed, really just to understand where and if people have served in the community, what their role has been, what their input opportunities have been, their level of commitment, their level of understanding, if they've ever participated in a committee before. And then, like I said, I'm sorry, I just about skipped one. Any potential conflict of interest, I saw that on a lot of applications. It was mentioned here, so I thought it was important to include that. So really just reworded our acknowledgement to make it more broad and more all-encompassing. So it includes acknowledgement of the conduct policy, includes the acknowledgement that this information is a public record, so it can be requested, shared, called for, things of that nature. We will be able to attach the full policy so they can see that if they need to reference it. Really just wanted to make this a better, broader document. So this is included in your attachments. Also included what it looks like without being all marked up. We have a live document application builder, so I can't do it until we get to the point to where you all are ready to make that decision. So that's why it's just a little bit marked up here. So anything glaring that stands out to anyone?
I'm having a tough time with age. I mean, I don't know where you can ask somebody their age to determine whether or not they would be a good fit. And I kind of am having a hard time even with the race. I mean, you know, we ask for race for demographic information in corporate America, not for hiring practices, but to look at other things. So that please add or specify your age. Ugh.
So our minimum age for participation in any board or committee is 18. Oh. So that's the only reason that we asked that, and that's been on the application.
But we're saying to remove that and to add their actual age.
Just because we've always asked if they're 18 or older, so we're not asking anyone's birth date. We're not asking them to give us that information.
No, but are we not just above that unless
Yes.
I'm not reading it right?
No, you're correct, but we're just asking for a number.
I'm 68.
Does it add value to know a person's age? Are we looking for different age representation?
I think that is wrong on 1,000 different levels.
It's public data.
I guess, do you want to have only 50-year-olds and up on our Parks and Rec committee, for example?
I would want the best qualified people on the Parks and Rec committee.
Even so, sometimes you can't get all of that, and you might want a perspective of someone in their 20s or 30s, and you wouldn't necessarily know it.
I'm just going to go on record of saying I don't think we should ask people's age.
No, I hear what you're saying. I'm just trying to understand how or it might add value to our decision-making process, because this is an application, and if we have that data from the others, does it matter?
Is it an application? I know it's not employment, and is it legal to ask somebody's age on an application?
Yes.
Really?
But they don't have to answer out, but I just leave it the way it is. Are you 18 years older? And then with the seniors, are you older than 55?
Well, and that's what we were trying to get around, because we were asking it twice, essentially. Because we were asking, are you 18 or older? And then we were asking, are you 55 or older if you are wanting to serve on the senior advisory committee? So we were just going to ask, what is your age as of this time? And that gives us the qualifier.
Well, just getting back
to the purpose of the applications, if you saw a person's age, would it matter?
If it wouldn't matter, then we just need to know if they're 18 or older. If you think it might matter in certain circumstances, then it might be
in different circumstances, it matters.
So this is.
You have to be over 18, and for the one board, you have to be over. But I don't know if you need to ask it twice on every application. You only ask it if they're applying for the senior board.
So let me ask you this. So then you'd be okay, and I'm going to be really out of the box. You'd be okay then if every committee had 18 and 25-year-olds.
It could be, but that's going to come back to what Jerry was talking
If they're good.
Because he said, or you said, all older people, so I'll go the other way.
Well, no, but when I'm reading it, I can discern based on what they're telling me how old they are.
So that's right. So that was my point. I think when we're reading the application, we get a gist of how old they are, and it probably somehow
God, I
does
just can't
that.
believe you guys are even saying this. This is just so absolutely insane to me.
Don't
trying
misunderstand.
No, but you're saying we're trying. Why would we even consider trying to figure out what someone's age is?
To have a diverse representation.
Imagine yourself in court. Well, we are on TV. Imagine yourself telling the people that we're going to look at for different ages so that we can make sure that we pick and choose so we have a different generation. I mean, that is biasness to me. No, I wasn't. I wasn't accusing you of that at all.
But reading an application, you can tell a lot. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
I would ask.
So you're doing the same thing then. That's right. So if you're reading the application, you're doing the same thing. I think we have a very young demographic in this town. I think
Do
it's
we not
important.
want the best people?
I think we all do.
Why are you limiting their terms? So if you want the best people, you pick the best people. You pick them yourself.
So why do we have term limits for anything? Why are there term limits for
Any position anywhere in the United States.
Don't have term
If
limits.
you want the best.
I'm not governing the whole United States.
Well, I heard that Councilman Garamella wanted to add to this discussion, so did you have something you want to say?
I heard something from over here.
That's fine. Nothing.
That is
Okay.
just.
So sounds like we might want to come back to that age one.
Okay. And so just really quickly, wanted to show matrix that we mentioned earlier. This is super difficult to see. I apologize. And this just captures those questions, that just kind of litany of questions, so that you can see who all you have at a glance. This is not every question from the application, but this is really kind of those qualifiers that you're looking for. This is not telling you someone's age, but this is going to tell you what all of that other kind of involvement information is. So you still are going to be able to go back and look to that application, see if there's other information you want to pull from to make your most informed decision when you get to the appointment stage.
So let me ask this: what is the again, looking at the best, what is the qualifier for how long you've been a resident of Morrisville? So if I've moved from Pennsylvania and I am a retired engineer in X, Y, or Z, and I would be the perfect candidate for whatever it may be, what is that number going to provide for anybody?
So let me field this one. So what we're providing on this is just data that you may or may not consider as you evaluate appointments. There's no criteria, there's no minimum qualifications. It's just information that we're going to pull that you valued from the application so that you have something to compare across the spectrum of people that applied. You've mentioned a couple times the most qualified. That's not really the way the advisory committees work. It's people that are interested in their community and want to volunteer, and sometimes they have experience in the committee they apply for, and sometimes they just want to serve. And those are the subjective choices you get to make.
So I think this is helpful because I'll tell you one thing. I do something kind of similar, and like Morrisville 101, and we've talked about this in the past. We like the idea that folks have served or have attended, rather, Morrisville 101 because it gives them a good, healthy background on everything Morrisville. So this chart I could see helps me. I don't have to do that on my own now. You're going to do that so I can see that comparison across all the applicants.
And that's kind of our aim, because I think more than one council member was doing that. So let us take that legwork off of you.
Well, I will say this. I'm glad that council rules don't apply to who gets to run for election, because if that were the case, I wouldn't have been even able to run for office. I wouldn't be sitting here right now today based on some of the criteria that you all are wanting to select people from.
I think anyone who cared to find out the information about any of the candidates did. So that's kind of what we're trying to do. Some of these data points will be useful for us and some won't, but these are the data points we've chosen as a council to try to collect as a group. And that's okay.
Oh, I know. I remember conversations we've had about which committees I served on and what I volunteered for before I ran for office. So I know that there's the concern, and I don't think that disqualified me at all for sitting in my seat.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, I'm kind of a Jerry here. I don't know if that, to me, doesn't make, I could take it off. But again, this was before I got here, the first one. How long have you lived in Morrisville? It really doesn't matter.
Who cares?
That's fine, but again, it takes 4 votes to get it off. Yeah. But I want to move on. The one I would like to see added was somehow geographically, I would like a broader diversity, so I don't want to open up a can of worms. We don't have to have a big discussion, but I'd like to see some up there that says what district you live in.
We're going to vet residency and district for you on your behalf so that people don't have to put that. We're going to provide that information. We're planning on providing that information. Correct. Correct. And again, information's there. It matters to some of you. It doesn't matter to some of you. You all put your individual votes in.
And we want to provide everyone with the same information.
Then one more, or are you done? I just had one little thing. It had to, if you're done, mine was in my email that I sent, but I'm big on, based on what other towns do, because again, it's knowledge already out there. Just on our webpage, putting the board members' names up there, and maybe have the town have an email that they could direct, not individually, but as a group to that group. Yeah. And then the name of who's on the board and the chair and vice chair.
That is on our website now.
It is?
Yeah.
Oh, it is now? Okay. Sorry, I just checked it, I thought yesterday and didn't see it.
But not a group email. That doesn't exist.
Yeah, we don't have a group email.
There's not a group email, but the roster for each board is available out there. Mm-hmm.
The admin person, so they can send an email there.
And their staff contact.
Forwarded to the group if someone wanted to.
Right, I know there's an admin one maybe, but I think if there's a more direct one that they feel more open, just okay, I know it's getting to them versus somebody.
So when we've had this conversation,
That's
before,
private emails.
Yeah.
Private emails.
I know a town email that says.
But staff's still going to be the one that checks that.
Well, that's fine, but can't you have it forwarded into their box?
Well, I think Aaron's saying we can set one up, but admin's really going to manage that for you, not a chair of a committee.
I'm not disagreeing with you.
Yeah.
I'm just saying there was some conversation we had around this in the past too, and
All right, if you will give me one more minute of forbearance here. We have talked about.
We'll bring this one back.
Okay.
All right.
Sorry.
Motion to.
Okay. Was there any other staff items or council comments before we adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. It is 10:10. We are adjourned.